Hypercube Halosphere Hollow Planets Archetype Forbidden TPT. These greatest kept secret in history as above so below. Let's take a journey of discovery to a place very close to our heart. Source 1. Ancient history. In ancient times, the idea of subterranean realms seemed arguable, and became intertwined with the concept of places such as the Greek Hades, the Nordic Svartalfheim, the Christian Hell, and the Jewish Sheol, with details describing inner earth in Kabbalistic literature, such as the Zohar and Histlavrahim. The idea of a subterranean realm is also mentioned in the Vedic texts such as the Puranas. According to one story, in the Puranas there is an ancient city called Shambhala, which is located inside the earth. The belief in Shambhala, as a city inside the earth, is also found in Tibetan Buddhism. The concept of a subterranean land inside the earth is popular in mythology, folklore and legends in ancient times. According to the ancient Greeks, there were caverns under the surface which were entrances leading to the underworld, some of which were the caverns at Tainaron in Laconia, at Troezene in Argolis, at Aphthyia in Thesprotia, at Heraclea in Pontus, and in Ermeone. In Thracians and Dacians legend it is said that there are underground chambers occupied by an ancient god called Zamaxis. In Mesopotamian religion there is a story of a man who, after traveling through the darkness of a tunnel in the mountain of Mashu, entered a subterranean garden. Chapel, bell tower and penitential beds on Station Island. The bell tower stands on a mount that is the site of the original cave, which according to various myths is an entrance which leads inside the earth to a place of purgatory. The cave has been closed since October 25, 1632. In Celtic mythology there is a legend of a cave called Cruachan, also known as Ireland's Gate to Hell, a legendary and ancient cave from which according to a legend say that strange creatures would emerge in ancient times and be seen on the surface of the earth. There are also stories of medieval knights and saints who went on pilgrimages to a cave located in Station Island, County Donegal in Ireland, where they made journeys inside the earth into a place of purgatory. There is an Irish myth which says tunnels in County Down, Northern Ireland, lead to the land of the subterranean Tuatha Dé Danann, a group of people who are believed to have introduced Druidism to Ireland, and then went back underground. An ancient legend of the Angami Naga tribes of India claim that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from a subterranean land inside the earth. There are legends from the Taindo people that their ancestors emerged in ancient times from two caves in a mountain underground. It is the belief of the natives of the Malinaskis Trobriand Islands that their ancestors had come from a subterranean land through a cavern hole called Abucula. There is an ancient legend held in Mexican folklore that a cave in a mountain 5 miles south of Ajinaga, Mexico, is possessed by devilish creatures who came from inside the earth. There was an ancient myth held in the Middle Ages that some mountains located between Isanach and Gothi in Germany holds a portal to the inner earth. There is an old Russian legend that says the Samoyeds, an ancient Siberian tribe, traveled to an underground cavern city to live inside the earth. In Native American mythology, it is said that the ancestors of the Mandan people in ancient times emerged from a subterranean land through a cave at the north side of the Missouri River. There is also a tale about a tunnel in the San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona near Cedar Creek disambiguation needed, which is said to lead inside the earth to a land inhabited by a mysterious tribe. It is also the belief of the tribes of Iroquois that their ancient ancestors emerged from a subterranean world inside the earth. The elders of the Hopi people believe that a seppuku entrance in the Grand Canyon exists which leads to the underworld. According to South American mythology, the belief of the Brazilian Indians, who live alongside the Paraná River in Brazil, claim that their forefathers emerged in ancient times from an underground land, and that many of their ancestors still remain inside the earth. There are also legends that say the ancestors of the Inca Empire came from underground caves which are located east of Cusco, Peru. 17th and 18th century. Edmund Halley's hypothesis. Edmund Halley in 1692 put forth the idea of Earth consisting of a hollow shell about 800 kilometers, approximately 500 miles thick, two interconcentric shells and an innermost core, about the diameters of the planets Venus, Mars, and Mercury. Atmospheres separate these shells, and each shell has its own magnetic poles. The spheres rotate at different speeds. Halley proposed this scheme in order to explain anomalous compass readings. He envisaged the atmosphere inside as luminous, and possibly inhabited, and speculated that escaping gas caused the aurora borealis. DeCant and Lee have claimed, in their Lands Beyond, that Leonhard Euler also proposed a hollow Earth idea, getting rid of multiple shells and postulating an interior sun 1,000 kilometers, approximately 620 miles across, to provide light to advanced in-Earth civilization, but they provide no references. Indeed, Euler did not propose a hollow Earth, but there is a slightly related thought experiment. DeCant and Lee also claim that Sir John Leslie expanded on Euler's idea, suggesting two central suns named Pluto and Proserpine. This was unrelated to the dwarf planet Pluto, which was discovered and named some time later. Leslie did propose a hollow Earth in his 1829 Elements of Natural Philosophy pages 449 and 453, but does not mention interior suns. Leclerc Milford in 1781 led a journey with hundreds of Creek Indians to a series of caverns near the Red River above the junction of the Mississippi River. According to Milford, the original Creek Indian ancestors are believed to have emerged out to the surface of the earth in ancient times from the caverns. Milford also claimed the caverns they saw could easily contain 15,000-20,000 families. 19th century. In 1818, John Cleve Sims, Jr., suggested that the Earth consisted of a hollow shell about 1,300 kilometers, approximately 810 miles thick, with openings about 2,300 kilometers, approximately 1,400 miles across at both poles, with 4 inner shells each open at the poles. Sims became the most famous of the early hollow Earth proponents. He proposed making an expedition to the North Pole hole, thanks to efforts of one of his followers, James McBride. United States President John Quincy Adams indicated he would approve of this, but he left office before this could occur. The new president of the United States, Andrew Jackson, halted the attempt. It is possible this is the source of the, and true, legend that Jackson believed in a flat earth, and was consequently the only United States president to do so. Jeremiah Reynolds also delivered lectures on the hollow earth and argued for an expedition. Reynolds went on an expedition to Antarctica himself but missed joining the Great U.S. Exploring Expedition of 1838 and 1842, even though that venture was a result of his agitation. Though Sims himself never wrote a book about his ideas, several authors published works discussing his ideas. McBride wrote Sims' theory of concentric spheres in 1826. It appears that Reynolds has an article that appeared as a separate booklet in 1827, Remarks of Sims' Theory, which appeared in the American Quarterly Review. In 1868, a Professor W.F. Leone published The Hollow Globe, which put forth the Sims-like hollow earth hypothesis, but failed to mention Sims himself. Sims' son Americus then published the Sims theory of concentric spheres in 1878 to set the record straight. 20th century. The Nazi era Thule Society reported much about Tibetan myths of openings into the earth. There is even a theory that Hitler ordered a research journey for such an opening in Antarctica, based on a speech of Admiral Donitz in front of a German submarine in 1944, when he claimed the German submarine fleet is proud of having built an invisible fortification for the Fuhrer anywhere in the world. During the Nuremberg trials, Donitz spoke of an invisible fortification in midst of the eternal ice. An early 20th century proponent of hollow earth, William Reed, wrote Phantom of the Poles in 1906. He supported the idea of a hollow earth, but without interior shells or inner sun. The spiritualist writer Walburga, Lady Paget, in her book Call It Place with an Unseen Friend, 1907, was an early writer to mention the hollow earth theory. She claimed that cities exist beneath the desert, which is where the descendants of Atlantis moved to. She further claimed that an entrance will be discovered to this subterranean kingdom in the 21st century. William Fairfield Lorien, in his book Paradise Found, The Cradle of the Human Race at the North Pole, presented his belief that humanity had originated on a continent in the Arctic, called Hyperborea. This view influenced some of the early hollow earth theorists. According to Marshall Gardner, both the Eskimo and Mongolian peoples had come from the interior of the earth from an entrance located at the North Pole. Marshall Gardner, distinct from Martin Gardner, mentioned below, wrote A Journey to the Earth's Interior in 1913 and an expanded edition in 1920. He placed an interior sun in the hollow earth. He even built a working model of the hollow earth and patented it. U.S. Patent 1,096,102. Gardner made no mention of Reed, but did take Sims to task for his ideas. In the same time, Vladimir Bruchev wrote a fiction novel Plutonia, where the hollow earth's interior possessed one inner the central sun and was inhabited by prehistoric species. The interior was connected with the surface by a hole in the Arctic. The explorer Ferdinand Ossibowski wrote a book in 1922 titled Beasts, Men and Gods. In the book, Ossibowski tells of a story which was imparted to him concerning a subterranean kingdom which exists inside the earth. This kingdom was known to the Buddhists as a garden. George Popashvili, in his book Anything Can Happen, 1940, claimed that there was a discovery in the Caucasus Mountains of a cavern containing giant human skeletons with heads as big as bushel baskets, and also of an ancient tunnel nearby which leads down into the inside of the earth. According to Popashvili, one man who entered the tunnel never returned to the surface. Other writers of the 20th century have proposed that ascended masters of esoteric wisdom inhabit subterranean caverns or a hollow earth. Antarctica, the North Pole, Tibet, Peru, and Mount Shasta in California, USA, have all had their advocates as the locations of entrances to a subterranean realm referred to as Agartha, with some even advancing the hypothesis that UFOs have their homeland in these places. The writer Log Samarantha, in his book The Cave of the Ancients, wrote that an underground chamber system exists beneath the Himalayas of Tibet, and is filled with ancient machinery, records, and treasures. Michael Grumley, a cryptozoologist, has linked Bigfoot and other hominid cryptids to ancient tunnel systems underground. Douglas Baker wrote in one of his books that he had an astral journey to the inner earth, where he observed a subterranean civilization. Other occult writers such as Guy Ballard and Alice Bailey have written that they have had out-of-body experiences and that mysterious beings inside of the earth. According to the ancient astronaut writer Peter Colosimo, a robot was seen entering a subterranean tunnel below a monastery in Mongolia. He also claimed lights were seen from underground in Azerbaijan. Colosimo and other ancient astronaut writers such as Robert Geralds linked these activities to UFOs. A book allegedly by Drive Raymond Bernhardt, which appeared in 1964, The Hollow Earth, exemplifies the idea of UFOs coming from inside the earth. The book rehashes Reed and Gardner's ideas and ignores Sims. Bernhardt also adds his own ideas. The Ring Nebula proves the existence of hollow worlds, as well as speculation on the fate of Atlantis and the origin of flying saucers. Bernhardt argued that the inhabitants of Atlantis took refuge in the Earth's interior before the city was destroyed in great calamity. It was Atlanteans who piloted the flying machines known in ancient India as Geminis and in the modern world as flying saucers. After the U.S. bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Bernhardt claimed the Atlanteans became concerned that radioactive air might flow into the world's interior, and so some emerged in their flying saucers in an act of self-defense. An article by Martin Gardner revealed that Dr. Walter Seidmeister used the pseudonym Bernhardt, but not until the publishing of Walter Captain Menkel's Subterranean Worlds, 100,000 Years of Dragons, Dwarves, the Dead, Lost Races and UFOs from Inside the Earth, in 1989, did the full story of Bernhardt/Seidmeister become well known. The pages of the science fiction pulp magazine Amazing Stories promoted one such idea from 1945 to 1949 as the Shaver Mystery. The magazine's editor, Ray Palmer, ran a series of stories by Richard Sharp Shaver supposedly claimed as factual, though presented in the context of fiction. Shaver claimed that a superior prehistoric race had built a honeycomb of caves in the earth, and that their degenerate descendants, known as Darrow, live there still, using the fantastic machines abandoned by the ancient races to torment those of us living on the surface. As one characteristic of this torment, Shaver described voices that purportedly came from no explainable source. Thousands of readers wrote to affirm that they, too, too had heard the fiendish voices from inside the Earth. Hollow Earth theorists have claimed a number of different locations for the entrances which lead inside the Earth. Other than the South and North Pole, entrances in locations which have been cited include Paris in France, Staffordshire in England, Montreal in Canada, Hangzhou in China, and the Amazon rainforest. Fantastic stories, supposedly believed as factual within fringe circles, have also circulated that Adolf Hitler and some of his followers escaped to hollow lands within the Earth after World War II via an entrance in Antarctica. Point. See also Hitler's supposed adherence to concave hollow Earth ideas. Some writers have proposed building megastructures that have some similarities to a hollow Earth and -C Dyson sphere, globus cassus. 21st century. In 2011, Horatio Valens and Paul Beniti presented a 2-hour Osiria map collection video on centuries-old maps of the Arctic region and the North Pole, making a case for a 100-mile-wide canyon in the center of the physical North Pole, into which north-flowing rivers drain into a hollow Earth. The maps were collected by Harry Hubbard. Concave hollow Earths. An example of a concave hollow Earth. Humans live on the interior, with the universe in the center. Instead of saying that humans live on the outside surface of a hollow planet, sometimes called a convex hollow Earth hypothesis, some have claimed that our universe itself lies in the interior of a hollow world, calling this a concave hollow Earth hypothesis. The surface of the Earth, according to such a view, might resemble the interior shell of a sphere. Purportedly verifiable hypotheses of a concave hollow Earth need to be distinguished from a thought experiment which defines a coordinate transformation such that the interior of the Earth becomes exterior and the exterior becomes interior. For example, in spherical coordinates, let radius r go to r superscript 2/r, where r is the Earth's radius. The transformation entails corresponding changes to the forms of physical laws. This is not a hypothesis but an illustration of the fact that any description of the physical world can be equivalently expressed in more than one way. Cyrus Teague, a doctor from upstate New York, proposed such a concave hollow Earth in 1869, calling his scheme cellular cosmogony. Teague founded a group called the Koreshan Unity based on this notion, which he called Koreshanity. The main colony survives, as a preserved Florida State Historic Site, at Estero, Florida, but all of Teague's followers have now died. Teague's followers claim to have experimentally verified the concavity of the Earth's curvature, through surveys of the Florida coastline making use of rectilineator equipment. Several 20th century German writers, including Peter Bender, Johannes Lang, Karl Neupert, and Fritz Braun, published works advocating the hollow Earth hypothesis, or hollow Earth. It has even been reported, although apparently without historical documentation, that Adolf Hitler was influenced by concave hollow Earth ideas and sent an expedition in an, obviously unsuccessful, attempt to spy on the British fleet by pointing infrared cameras up at the sky. Wagner, 1999. The Egyptian mathematician Mustafa Abdelkader wrote several scholarly papers working out a detailed mapping of the concave Earth model. In one chapter of his book On the Wild Side, approximately 1992, Martin Gardner discusses the hollow Earth model articulated by Abdelkader. According to Gardner, this hypothesis posits that light rays travel in circular paths and flow as they approach the center of the spherical star-filled cavern. No energy can reach the center of the cavern, which corresponds to no point a finite distance away from Earth in the widely accepted scientific cosmology. A drill, Gardner says, would lengthen as it traveled away from the cavern and eventually pass through the point at infinity corresponding to the center of the Earth in the widely accepted scientific cosmology. Supposedly no experiment can distinguish between the two cosmologies. Gardner notes that most mathematicians believe that an inside-out universe, with properly adjusted physical laws, is empirically irrefutable. Gardner rejects the concave hollow Earth hypothesis on the basis of Again's razor. Visual evidence. The deepest hole drilled to date is the SG-3 borehole, which is 12.3 kilometers, approximately 7.6 miles deep, part of the Soviet Kola Superdeep Borehole Project. Thus, visual knowledge of the Earth's structure extends that far. In fiction. Main article, Subterranean Fiction. A map of the interior world, from the Goddess of Edinburgh, approximately 1892. The idea of a hollow Earth is a very common element of fiction, appearing as early as Ludwig Holberg's 1741 novel Nicolae Klimii Iter Subterraneum. Niels Klim's underground travels, in which Nicolae Klim falls through a cave, while spelunking and spends several years living on both the smaller globe within and the inside of the outer shell. Other notable pre-20th century examples include Giacomo Casanova's 1788 Icosamaran, a 5-volume, 1,800-page story of a brother and sister who fall into the earth and discover the subterranean utopia of the Megamycars, a race of multicolored, hermaphroditic dwarfs. Simsonia, a voyage of discovery by a Captain Adam Seaborn, approximately 1820, which reflected the ideas of John Cleve Sims, J.R. Point Yan, Edgar Allan Poe's 1838. Novel The Narrative of Orford Gordon Pym of Nantucket, Jules Verne's 1864 novel A Journey to the Center of the Earth, which described a prehistoric subterranean world, and George Sand's 1884 novel Laura, Voyage Dansla Crystal, where unseen and giant crystals could be found in the interior of the Earth. The idea was used by Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of Tarzan, in the 7-novel Pellucidar series, beginning with At the Earth's Core approximately 1914. Using a mechanical drill, his heroes discover a prehistoric world, called Pellucidar, 500 miles below the surface, that is lit by an inner sun. The 1915 novel Plutonia by Vladimir Abruchev uses the concept of the hollow Earth to take the reader through various geological epochs. The idea has gradually become a staple of the science fiction and adventure genres, appearing in print, in film, on television, in comics, in role-playing games, and in many animated works. The DC Comics comic book The Warlord took place in the hollow Earth setting of Scarboris, and the Dungeons & Dragons setting Hollow World is similarly inspired by hollow Earth tales. The 3rd season of the TV show Sanctuary also involves a hollow Earth civilization. Source 2. World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow. Could the Earth, Moon, planets and stars all be hollow bodies? Amazingly, the answer is yes. And very likely inhabited within. What is our hollow Earth like? It is a terrestrial paradise, where the original Garden of Eden is located today, where the lost tribes of Israel live, where the political kingdom of God is located, where the lost Viking colonies of Greenland migrated to, where vanquished Germans migrated to after World War II, where flying saucers come from, where people live to be hundreds of years old in perfect health, where peace and prosperity exists for everyone, where heaven is located. Be Inner Sunday. Learn more from those that have been there. Olaf Jansen. I am the man whom Bruce Walton discovered was William Morgan Carl Unger, German submarine U-209 crew member Admiral Richard E. Bird Reinhold Schmidt, The Hollow Earth Enigma, Mysteries of the Universe, by Alec Macmillan Rhett, Colonel Billy F. Witter Tank Craftsman Phoebe Marie Holmes, My Visit to the Sun, our outer sun, to the New Jerusalem being built there for us by Jesus and all the saints, in the hollow interior of the sun the lost Viking colonies of Greenland. Do the Hollow Earth people have a message for us? There are many things in the late Larry Foreman's book, Passport to Eternity, that makes me believe that the flying saucer people came out in the desert outside Los Angeles in 1960 are actually from our Hollow Earth. They gave a message to Larry for all of us. Our planet is a prison planet and we were placed here for something that our ancestors did. Our ancestors were Adam and Eve, who broke a commandment given them by the Creator, do not partake of the forbidden fruit. The punishment for breaking that commandment was that it would cause them to become mortal beings, but also change their bodies so that they could have children, us. And they were expelled from His presence from their home in the Garden of Eden to outer surface world. We, as their descendants, are all living out a prison sentence on this prison planet we call Earth. We are living a life of probation, as the scriptures say, to see if we are willing to obey the Creator's commandments. Our original home was the Garden of Eden. Some say they, the others, come from the center of the universe, where there are two planets that share the same atmosphere, which is a concealed way of saying they are really from the center of the Earth, the hollow Earth, since we share our atmosphere with them through the polar openings. They told Larry that they lived lives that we would consider heaven. Deuteronomy 34 calls the land of our hollow Earth, the outmost parts of heaven, where the lost tribes of Israel were driven to. The prophet Isaiah wrote that in the last days God would set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Point. Isaiah 11:12. The four corners of the earth is the Garden of Eden, where out it flows four rivers to the four cardinal points of the compass. Those flying saucer beings convey that their capital city is on their southern hemisphere. In fact, it is located 800 miles beneath Jackson County, Missouri. Their capital city is the city of Eden, built next to the original Garden of Eden, where Olaf Jansen found it in 1830, when he sailed there with his father beyond the North Line through the North Polar opening, into the interior of our hollow Earth where the chosen people live. They explained to Olaf that the garden he was taken to inside our hollow Earth was none other than the navel of the Earth, and the cradle of the human race, and is called Eden and is located on the highest mountain plateau of the inner continent on their southern hemisphere. Since the directions of the compass are reverse of what they are on outer surface world, our south pole is their north pole, then their southern hemisphere is beneath our northern hemisphere, and their capital city is beneath North America. The coordinates the saucermen gave Larry for their capital city were south-southwest 1/49 feet 3 inch 10 cent, according to their coordinate system. Source 3. Secrets of the Hollow Earth. Many readers of the paranormal and the unexplained are familiar with the theory that the Earth is hollow. The idea is based on the ancient legends of many cultures that say there are races of people, entire civilizations, that thrive in subterranean cities. Very often, these dwellers of the world beneath are more technologically advanced than we on the surface. Some even believe that UFOs are not from other planets, but are manufactured by strange beings in the interior of the Earth. Who are these strange races of beings? How did they come to live inside the Earth? And where are the entrances to their underground cities? Agartha. The network. One of the most common names cited for the Society of Underground Dwellers is Agartha, or Agartha, with its capital city of Shambhala. The source for this information, apparently, is The Smoky God, the biography of a Norwegian sailor named Olaf Jansen. According to Agartha, Secrets of the Subterranean Cities, the story, written by Willis Emerson, explains how Jansen's sloop sailed through an entrance to the Earth's interior at the North Pole. For 2 years he lived with the inhabitants of the Agartha network of colonies who, Emerson writes, were a full 12 feet tall and whose world was lit by a smoky central sun. Shambhala the Lesser, one of the colonies, was also the seat of government for the network. While Shambhala the Lesser is an inner continent, its satellite colonies are smaller enclosed ecosystems located just beneath the Earth's crust or discreetly within mountains. How and why they went there. The many cataclysms and wars taking place on the surface drove these people underground, according to secrets. Consider the lengthy Atlantean-Lemurian War and the power of thermonuclear weaponry that eventually sank and destroyed these two highly advanced civilizations. The Sahara, the Gobi, the Australian outback and the deserts of the US are but a few examples of the devastation that resulted. The subcities were created as refuges for the people and as safe havens for sacred records, teachings and technologies that were cherished by these ancient cultures. The entrances. There are allegedly several entrances to the Kingdom of Agartha throughout the world. Kentucky Mammoth Cave, in south-central Kentucky, U.S. Mount Shasta, California, U.S. The Agarthian city of Telos allegedly exists within and beneath this mountain. Manaus, Brazil. Mato Grosso, Brazil, the city of Posit supposedly lies beneath this plain. Iguacu Falls, border or Brazil and Argentina. Mount Aponia, Italy. Himalayan Mountains, Tibet, the entrance to the underground city of Shanxi is allegedly guarded by Hindu monks. Mongolia, the underground city of Xinhua allegedly exists beneath the border of Mongolia and China. Rama, India, beneath this surface city is a long-lost subterranean city, they say, also named Rama. Pyramid of Giza, Egypt. King Solomon's Mines. Darrow Caves. North and South Poles. Source 4. the British astronomer Edmund Halley, of comet fame, proposed that the Earth might consist of several concentric spheres placed inside one another in the manner of a Chinese box puzzle. The two inner shells had diameters comparable to Mars and Venus, while the solid inner core was as big as the planet Mercury. More startling was Halley's proposal that each of these inner spheres might support life. They were supposed to be bathed in perpetual light created by a luminous atmosphere. When there was an unusually bright display of aurora borealis, Halley postulated that it might have been caused by glowing gas escaping from the Earth's interior into our atmosphere. Halley proposed his theory in the 17th century, when scientific knowledge of the structure of the Earth was still primitive. As time went on, the improbability of a hollow Earth became apparent to scientists and scholars, but the idea was taken up by writers of imaginative fiction. Certainly the best known was Jules Verne, who wrote Journey to the Center of the Earth in 1864. Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a whole cycle of novels set in the hollow Earth. Verne, Burroughs, and a lot of other writers of science fiction were inspired by the theories of an early 19th century American eccentric named John Cleves Sims. Like Halley, Sims thought the Earth was made up of 5 concentric spheres. But he added a new wrinkle. There was a huge opening, popularly called Sims Hole, at each of the poles. The ocean flowed in and out of these openings. The interior of the Earth was also supposed to be inhabited. Sims, an army captain who had served with distinction in the War of 182-1, was an enthusiastic evangelist for his theory. He traveled around the country trying to raise money to send an expedition to the North Polar Hole. He even petitioned Congress for money to finance the expedition, and the proposal garnered 25 votes. A rich doctor financed an 1824 expedition to the South Pole to find the Sims Hole. The expedition was unsuccessful, but Sims died with his idea intact, and a stone model of the hollow Earth according to Sims sits atop a memorial raised to him by his son at Hamilton, Ohio. In 1906, William Reed published a book called Phantom of the Poles in which he stated, "I am able to prove my theory that the Earth is not only hollow, but suitable in its interior to sustain human life with as little discomfort as on its exterior, and can be made accessible to mankind with 1/4 the outlay of money, time and life that it costs to build the subway in New York City. The number of people who can settle in this new world, if not already occupied, will be billions." Reed's startling proposal received scant attention from a skeptical public. Somewhat more influential was Marshall B. Gardner, who wrote about Sims' theory a few years later. Gardner rejected the absurd Sims notion of 5 concentric spheres, but he enthusiastically adopted the idea of openings at the poles. According to Gardner, the interior of the Earth was lighted by a small sun about 600 miles in diameter. Unfortunately for Gardner, he published his book in 1920. In 1926, Admiral Richard E. Byrd made his first flight over the North Pole, and in 1929 he performed the same feat at the South Pole. As history records, Admiral Byrd did not find any gaping holes. Since the holes were supposed to be over 1,000 miles in diameter, they would have been pretty hard to overlook. Gardner did not abandon his hollow Earth ideas, but he did stop lecturing and writing about them. However, others who have kept the faith have insisted that Byrd actually did discover the big hole at the pole and actually flew a good way into the interior of the Earth, and that for some obscure mean the government is covering up this fact. Some hollow Earthers insist that on later expeditions Byrd actually penetrated some 4,000 miles into the interior of the hollow Earth. Satellite photograph has presented hollow Earthers with another problem. None of the photographs of the Earth taken from space show polar holes. But the hollow Earthers are not about to be put down by such evidence. It's all part of the cover, they say. The satellite photos are all retouched to hide the hole. Actually, Sonic of the early photos of the Earth from space did show what appeared to be a gigantic hole at one pole. The pictures, however, were composites made up of many smaller photos. The hole was simply an area that had not been photographed. Nonsense, insist the hollow Earthers. These were the real photos that slipped through the web of censorship by accident. As with the Byrd expedition, these polar hole photos have become pillars of the hollow Earth faith. An odd champion of the hollow Earth was Richard S. Shaver, a Pennsylvania welder who claimed that by racial memory he had reclaimed all of man's forgotten history. His tales included accounts of evil creatures called bears who lived in huge subterranean caverns that honeycombed the Earth. There is also a vast body of occult speculation about a huge underground civilization known as Agartha. It is supposed to be the of hidden masters whose powers range from the merely supernatural to the absolutely godlike. More bizarre even in the theories of Sims and Gardner was the one put forth by Cyrus Reed Teague, an herb doctor and alchemist from Utica, New York. Teague held that the scientists had gotten it all backward, and that the Earth was hollow and we are living on the inside. Source 5. Hollow Earth in the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees make several comments in relation to the hollow Earth which should not be taken lightly. Although they are but comments in passing, their significance should be recognized. One such Puranic comment has to do with the narration of the Kaki Avatar that at the end of Kali Yuga, the Kaki Avatar will be born in the best of Brahmin families of the city of Shambhala to annihilate miscreants on the surface of the globe. Afterwards, the general Puranic version goes that Vedic culture will be resettled on the surface of the Earth from the interior of the planet. It is noteworthy that Shambhala is depicted in the Pyrenees as a city of the planet's interior. Not only in the Pyrenees, but in Tibetan collective memory also, Shambhala is deemed to be a city in the Earth's interior. There are other prominent Puranic stories which openly make reference to the hollow portion of the Earth, such as the one relating to the Avatar Parashurama, and may be found in the 9th canto, 16th chapter, texts 19-21, of the Bhagavatam Purana. The 19th text says that he confronted the warrior caste 21 times and banished them to the face of the Earth. The word Prithavan was used to indicate the face of the Earth. Then it is explained that Parashurama distributed the 8 points of the compass to certain rishis. This only makes sense, as he was rather disgusted with the warrior caste. Rishis are different than warriors. Of course they are members of the priestly caste. For example, they are tolerant, intellectual, they practice goodness, etc. After mentioning the 8 points of the compass and the rishis who received lordship over these areas, the Meghayatak, the middle portion, was then mentioned. The Bhagavad Purana says that the middle portion was distributed to Kashyapa Rishi. So, while adopting a descriptive tone of narration, and after having mentioned the surface or the face of the world, the Bhagavad Purana went on to contrast by mentioning the middle portion, practically in the same breath. The wording and storyline of this narration about the avatar Parashurama is directly indicative of the hollow earth theory. And yet another is the story of the sons of Maharaj Sagara. It seems that Indra had stolen the sacrificial horse meant for the Ashvamedha sacrifice, a type of fire sacrifice. As the story goes, the sons of Sagara went searching after the horse and came to a northern ocean, which they traveled over, and entered into the interior of the earth. There, they found the horse at the hermitage of Kapila Rishi. The sons of Sagara manhandled the Rishi, even though he swore that it wasn't him who had stolen the horse. What can we conclude from this story? Well, first of all, because they manhandled a rishi, we can conclude that the sons of Maharaj Sagara were a rough bunch indeed. On a more serious note, though, a correspondence exists in that hollow earth investigators indicate the existence of openings near the polar areas of this planet, and support such allegations with various evidences, for example, polar anomalies such as warming. This would account for having to cross a northern ocean in order to enter into the interior of the planet. The Bhagavad Purana doesn't go into as much description as other Puranas do. The Bhagavad just says that the sons of Sagara went in the northeast direction. From what exact point we don't really know. But even this statement seems to confirm the placement of the opening by hollow earth investigators, who place it in the Arctic Ocean between Ellesmere Island and the Russian peninsula Severnaya Zemlya. Another noteworthy point to be gleaned from this narration is that Vedic culture existed in the hollow earth, as none other than Kapila Rishi had his hermitage there. How congruent with the descriptions given by Olaf Jansen, the Norwegian youth who claimed to have wandered into the opening with his father on their sailboat. Olaf described a human society which seemed to correspond to Puranic descriptions from before the start of the Kali Yuga. He described humans being 12 to 14 feet tall, with lifespans of almost 1,000 years, photographic memories, who spoke Sanskrit and worshipped the sun, albeit the interior sun. An obvious question arises, however, why don't the Puranas just come out and explain to us about the hollow earth, then? Well, remember that these Puranas were originally compiled at the juncture between two yugas, before the effects of the Kali Yuga, such as forgetfulness and ignorance, had completely come to manifest. Maybe it is for this reason that the Puranas speak of the hollow earth in such a way that they assume people naturally know about it, and therefore don't offer any special explanations. By way of analogy, if a writer were to narrate the story of the deciding battle of the American Revolution, the Battle of Yorktown, he or she might explain that the French cut off any possible retreat by the British by way of sea, and then the writer would probably go on with the story. But the writer would assume that the reader knows who the French are and that they come from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and that such an ocean indeed exists. It would not occur to the writer to try to explain and substantiate the existence of the French people or of the ocean in the middle of the narration, obviously. It seems that, similarly, the Puranas simply mention the bowels of the earth and Kapila Rishi's hermitage there in the course of their narrations, without offering any special explanations. But the Puranic evidence is actually of much interest to the adherents of the hollow earth theory. It actually constitutes a landmark addition to the body of hollow earth evidence. This is interesting, because the Tibetan lore referring to the hollow earth became popularized among the proponents of the theory a long time ago, even spawning a major motion picture production entitled Shangri-La in the 1930s, which was redone in the 70s. Maybe this was due to the impact of a book written by Nicholas Roerich entitled simply Shambhala, which was published in 1930. He had traveled in Tibet and related the rich hollow earth folklore in his book, which mentions the cities of Shambhala, Shangri-La, and the kingdom of Agartha. Quite possibly the Tibetan hollow earth collective memory has been better conserved because of the tunnels that are said to run between Agartha and Tibet. It is possible that the Tibetans received influence from the hollow earth for a longer period of time for this reason. The Puranic hollow earth content hasn't been much recognized, because we in the West have always experienced the Puranas through the filter of westernized Indologists, who weren't much aware of hollow earth folklore, nor were they exactly looking for clues about the true geological configuration of our planet, as they went about their studies of the Vedic literature. These comments about the hollow earth must have passed them by, as did a lot of comments in the Vedic literature. When the British first studied the Vedic literature after their invasion into India 200 years ago, they noticed comments about things such as aircraft, vimanas, arrows and discs which were able to pursue fleeing targets, weapons born of mantras, as well as beings from other planets with incredible lifespans who were identified as the progenitors of humanity. Well, the British naturally disregarded such comments as poppycock. But now we have seen some of these things come true. We have seen the advent of flight, guided missiles and voice-activated weapons. Thus it might behoove followers of Vedic Dharma to revisit the Puranic narrations with a wide-angle lens. These comments about the bowels of the earth, the hermitage of Kapila Rishi, the Parashurama avatar and about Shambhala certainly merit specific focus. Source 6. The Aryan invasion theory has been a basis and justification of Western interpretation upon the civilization and history of India. Although many Indologists within India have been influenced by such thought, the theory has not met majority acceptance within India and is even coming under attack in the West. David Frawley, one Sanskrit scholar recognized both inside as well as outside of India, has assessed the current situation of the Aryan invasion theory thusly. One of the main ideas used to interpret and generally devalue the ancient history of India is the theory of the Aryan invasion. According to this account, India was invaded and conquered by nomadic light-skinned Indo-European tribes from Central Asia around 1500 to 100 BC who overthrew an earlier and more advanced dark-skinned Dravidian civilization from which they took most of what later became Hindu culture. Ellipsis points this idea totally foreign to the history of India, whether north or south, has become an almost unquestioned truth in the interpretation of ancient history today. Today, after nearly all the reasons for its supposed validity have been refuted, even major Western scholars are at last beginning to call it into question. David Frawley, The Myth of the Aryan Invasion. One main reason that the theory has been called into question is that there is no primary evidence. No monuments to any heroes of such invasions have been excavated, no related cemeteries unearthed, no battlefields identified in relation to the theory, no forts, in short nothing in the way of physical evidence. There is a host of other incongruencies, but this is the general idea. One major platform that Western scholars have relied upon to substantiate the theory is etymology. They trace linguistic patterns, encompassing East and West, and then by implication pinpoint a central geographic area which then serves as a common point of origin of the Indo-European language and race. This point, being basically the Caucasians and mountainous regions of Persia, is of course outside of India, such that the existence of the Aryan race in northern India is attributed to an invasion, and such is the explanation they offer for the Caucasian presence in India. It has often been pointed out that few other principal theories have ever been accepted based on such indirect, flimsy evidence. When something ends up being so rigidly imposed with such little basis, a reasonable mind will look for other motives. Again, we may rely on the broad understanding of David Frawley. It is important to examine the social and political implications of the Aryan invasion idea. First, it served to divide India into a northern Aryan and southern Dravidian culture which were made hostile to each other. This kept the Hindus divided and is still a source of social tension. Second, it gave the British an excuse in their conquest of India. They could claim to be doing only what the Aryan ancestors of the Hindus had previously done millennia ago. Third, it served to make Vedic culture later than and possibly derived from Middle Eastern cultures. With the proximity and relationship of the latter with the Bible and Christianity, this kept the Hindu religion as a sidelight to the development of religion and civilization to the west. Fourth, it allowed the sciences of India to be given a Greek basis, as any Vedic basis was largely disqualified by the primitive nature of the Vedic culture. This discredited not only the Vedas but the genealogies of the Puranas and their long list of the kings before the Buddha or Krishna were left without any historical basis. The Maghid period, instead of a civil war in which all the main kings of India participated, as it is described, became a local skirmish among petty princes that was later exaggerated by poets. In short, it discredited the most of the Hindu tradition and almost all its ancient literature. It turned its scriptures and sages into fantasies and exaggerations. This served a social, political and economical purpose of domination, proving the superiority of Western culture and religion. It made the Hindus feel that their culture was not the great thing that their sages and ancestors had said it was. It made Hindus feel ashamed of their culture and that its basis was neither historical nor scientific. It made them feel that the main line of civilization was developed first in the Middle East and then in Europe, and that the culture of India was peripheral and secondary to the real development of world culture. Such a view is not good scholarship or archaeology but merely cultural imperialism. The Western Vedic scholars did in the intellectual sphere what the British Army did in the political realm and discredit, divide and conquer the Hindus. In short, the compelling reasons for the Aryan invasion theory were neither literary nor archaeological but political and religious, and that is to say, not scholarship but prejudice. Such prejudice may not have been intentional, but deep-seated political and religious views easily cloud and blur our thinking. What impact does the Hollow Earth understanding have on this issue? The impact that it has may be found in one of the best places to hide anything right under our noses, in the Puranas themselves. The Puranas tell us that at the end of the Kali Yuga, Vedic culture becomes regenerated from the interior of the earth, after the Kauti Avatar brings the Kali Yuga to a close. This is not the only reference to the Hollow Earth in the Puranas, but it is the one which indicates the origin of the Aryans, Caucasian race, on the surface of the earth. The Caucasian race can easily be seen to stretch from northern India to Scandinavia and to European Russia. How far would it be from the Arctic coast of the Siberian and European side of the polar basin to the opening suggested by several Hollow Earth researchers, which is offset from the North Pole just above the New Siberian Islands? See the oval on the map in Chapter 7. A hop, skip and a jump no more than a few hundred miles. So, how difficult would it be for the Caucasian and, of course, other human races to reintroduce themselves to the surface of the planet from this particular opening at the end of every Kali Yuga? It does not seem that it would be so difficult at all. In addition, the fact that the Caucasian race is so light-skinned in northern Europe is indicative of a top-down migration. This is because in the Middle East and India, the race has a light tan complexion. It is easier to go from a light complexion to a darker complexion, while it is harder to believe that darker-skinned Caucasians migrated northwards, then became sun-bleached to their present blonde-haired, blue-eyed state. The genes which generate their complexions and blue eyes are passive. Therefore, we can't surmise that the Caucasians are not Caucasian in origin, but rather that their surface migration began in northern Europe, along the Arctic basin, from the polar opening to the Hollow Earth. The reader may keep in mind that in millennia past, these areas were not as cold as they are now. As an example, we'll note that Viking graves from 1,000 years ago have been opened up in Greenland, and it was found that roots, at that time, had penetrated the coffins. Now the graves lie under permafrost. This means that, previously, vegetation existed in the area and that there was a different climate. In addition to the large, polar openings, there are said to be tunnels which connect the surface of the planet with the hollow portion. Nicholas Roerich, for example, in his book Shambhala, wrote of his travels through Tibet in the 1920s, through the Karakoram Pass in the Altai Mountains. He was shown caves closed up by boulders, and he wrote of passing over what seemed to be hollow areas by the echoes from the horses' hoofs, and wrote of a current recollection of the hollow earth in the collective minds of the Tibetan people. Therefore, any cyclical reappearance of Vedic civilization and the Caucasian race could manifest from at least 2 points which span the length of the Aryan presence on our earth, from top to bottom. The Caucasian presence in northern Europe could be explained by migration from the polar opening, situated above the New Siberian Islands in the Arctic Basin, while openings and tunnels in the Tibetan region could account for Caucasian presence also, even down as far as the Indian subcontinent. India and the Hollow Earth. No Caucasian migration into India is necessarily indicative of an introduction of Vedic culture. Aryan insertion into any given area, India included, could have simply reinforced already existent Vedic culture without having been an introduction. It is not a matter, really, of accounting for the Aryan presence in the Indian subcontinent. Rather, it is a matter of accounting for human presence on the surface of the planet after the end of every Chaturyuga, and the Hollow Earth theory explains this admirably well in conjunction with the appearance of the Kauti avatar and regeneration of the surface population from Shambhala and the Hollow Earth. The Hollow Earth theory certainly strengthens the Puranic account of a cyclical repopulation of the surface of our planet from the Meghayatai, the hollow portion, including its chief city Shambhala, and suggests that what is past will one day be prologue. In this way, the Hollow Earth theory offers an intriguing alternative to previous interpretations of the Caucasian presence in India, otherwise known as the Aryan invasion theory. Source 7. Tilde big props and shout out to 1 trillion. The Hollow Earth theory view zone. The ultimate woo-woo. Part 1. Introduction. One concept, and potential bombshell of a game changer, has always stood out. It did so by stealth. Hollow Earth just pretended to be another loony idea that, some people just seem to get a kick out of. Only after looking at it in detail and absorbing the available information did I realize how much it actually means. Would mean. Apparently, does mean. And it can only be true or false. There is no middle ground, only hollow ground or solid ground. The range of the implications of the Earth being hollow are important. Hugely, massively, important. They go as far as explaining dozens of anomalies that surround us. All freaking kinds of parallel, alternative, weird and conspiratorial ideas. In a word, woo-woo ideas. Ideas which are becoming mainstream, and not that it matters what a majority of any kind thinks or what opinions it holds. The masses are dark, doesn't matter in the larger scheme of things. This first part about the ultimate woo-woo intends to synthesize as much as possible what one has to look at and know about to get a basic idea. There is also an emphasis on visual evidence in this introduction to the Hollow Earth. I can tell you right away, this is going to be a little irritating. Why? Because, while sifting through a lot of material, and trying to condense it into one conveniently sized article, it became larger and larger, and the chances for a manageable, readable article became smaller and smaller. They say something to the effect that the more for our claim, the more solid the evidence, for it has to be. In one sentence, solid evidence for the Hollow Earth, please. The ultimate irritating mystery and legend. This takes the biscuit. It is growing with the Hollow Earth thing. There is just so much data in so many different disciplines that most people who get into this in a serious way either try to write a book about it, or actually get around to write and publish one. Several articles out there on the web touch on the main points, and they are all on the rather long side. You can fill a small library with books about the subject. So, take it from me, there is no short and conveniently catchy way to present the evidence for the Hollow Earth. Less so, if you add the fact that the Earth is hollow and it is growing. That's right. We have a hollow and expanding Earth under our feet. Apparently. Yes, it is yet another deeply irritating mystery. Sorry for the cognitive dissonance, I am still tuning my wet piano. Several authors have done a thorough job at combing through the evidence. Just as an example, one writer and researcher has a bibliography of some 50 Arctic expedition books in this piece of 450 pages, and he gives these most diverse and astounding anomalies a cold and hard look. This author, Marshall B. Gardner, sent a copy of A Journey to the Earth's Interior, or Have the Poles Really Been Discovered, to the US government in 1920 and challenged them to refute it. The feds haven't gotten around to it yet, and it was a few decades ago. The bell rang a long time ago, if you ask me. One single article with most of the points that indicate that our Earth is hollow ellipsis points that sounds a lot easier than it is done. You end up writing a freaking book, or an endless piece of an article that you, the reader, might not have time for right now, while I don't get paid for it right now, actually, ever. The ultimate heresy. So here is the solution. We saddle the horse the wrong way. We just assume for 10 minutes that the Earth and all planets are obviously hollow in nature, and inhabited, at least in the case of Earth. We then deliver the evidence and documented observations as proof to those asking for this proof that the Earth is in fact a hollow sphere, and not a nice, solid, slightly flattened sphere around a progressively cooling liquid core, or flat. One more thing, before we get into the subject for real. If it is true that the Earth is a hollow sphere, and inhabited by beings who are by all accounts much superior to us, then it means that the implications are staggering. It is hard to think of bigger implications than the hollow Earth. It changes everything. It is the biggest and most direct game changer I could find in the field of alternative science. It is like coming around a corner and there you see Bugs Bunny, Santa Claus and the Pink Panther playing poker. Looks like they did not tell you something important. Very irritating. It would also mean that the Hollow Earth is the best kept secret of all the many well-kept secrets that are kept somewhere. In the woo-woo corner, for example. The totally bananas wing, where they keep those flat earthers. So here we go, hurry up and wait, and eventually, there you are. The ultimate woo-woo idea, only a few centuries ago, was that the Earth was a sphere. A roundish thing, a big marble in space, made of mostly rock. It was, of course, a flat surface, as everybody could check out for himself, with the oceans around the land masses ending a seaman's, already tough, life in a free fall into the abyss. It is said that those keeping the real shape of the world a secret did so, because it was good for business, and it kept curiosity in check. Good for certain business, and a check on inconvenient curiosity. This way, insisting that the Earth was flat, nobody knew where the highway was, and kept plodding along country dirt roads. Physically, mentally and spiritually. The ultimate secret. This Hollow Earth thing is the best kept secret of them all. If it is not true, it is not a secret. Aliens by the dozens who are milking us and mixing with us genetically is absolutely mainstream when compared to the hollow earth. But only the inclusion of not yet mainstream cosmology like the quantum vacuum, the electric nature of the universe, the fact that gravity is not at all explained, and a good dose of pattern recognition eases the way into the hollow earth zone. Actually, if you stack the two against each other, which model explains the observations a lot better than the other, the clear winner is hollow planets, including our Earth. It will take some time to explain it all, which is why there is some space reserved for more parts of this article. Fast forward to 2010, where the proverbial woo-woo topic, one that causes your otherwise still somewhat presentable reputation to make a big sucking sound, is the hollow earth dig. It is definitely on top of the list. The concept that the earth is a shell, a couple of 100 miles thick, with two polar openings that connect inner and outer surfaces, an inner sun and ellipsis points. Check this out, ellipsis points, intelligent life. Really intelligent life, not like us pack hunting, weapon-wielding primates with an inferiority complex, but really cool, intelligent life that, in a word, knows how to have a good party at the right times. Yes, of course they live inside and know how to get out quickly, too. Through the polar openings, for example. Those got them going about these cool flying discs, and the rotating fields helped, too. Jupiter is hollow with an interior sun. Look at this brilliant light shining at the pole. Let this roll around in your walnut for a second. It used to be the most freaky concept around, and only seconds ago when measured in earthly civilization's time. All sorts of immediately handy arguments were storming you, before you could even get halfway through the points you wanted to make. Back then, about the earth being round. You were actually burned at the stake, and it was not fun. Switch back to the hollow earth of today. Woo and you say, through and through, complete nonsense and dash impossible and dash we would know about it and dash give me a break and dash they can't keep a secret like this and dash what about the satellite photos and dash what about gravity and dash what about that other thing and dash are you saying you are wasting your time with this? Ellipsis points and so on. Look at it, as the best kept secret ever and dash for now. Rumors and even evidence of it abound, but no official statements or photos are shown at school, university, or primetime TV. Actually, that is not true. See the case of Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, U.S. Navy, and many other sober people further down the hollow earth path. The ultimate did you know that ellipsis points never mind. Here is a list of the wide range of evidence which we will now present to the unbelieving outer earth visitors who want to know why they have never heard about the hollow earth before and feel that they have been somewhat left out. Concepts. 1. All planets are spheres, not only the Earth, the Moon, Saturn, Jupiter, the Sun itself too. Standard planetary formation theories. How were they formed? What made them spin, and still does, completely woo-woo. 3. A massive planetary body with an incandescent and progressively cooling core would crack into pieces, while cooling and shrinking. 4. Gaseous planetary bodies like the Sun and the large planets of our solar system cannot generate a magnetic field, but they all have one. 5. All the solar system's outer planets emit more energy than they receive from the Sun. 6. A spinning planetary body in formation has zero gravity in its center, so mass does accumulate where gravitational and centrifugal forces are balanced within the area of the spinning matter, and that form would be a sphere with openings at the top and bottom, like a hurricane of matter in space and dash not, as a solid body with a solid center, the center has zero gravity. 7. If planets were formed from cosmic dust which started to condense into a body like Earth, then the angular momentum would still continue to increase, which it doesn't, and the Earth's spin is steady, not slowing down or speeding up. 8. Larger planets with more mass should spin more slowly than smaller planets with less mass and but they don't. The largest, Jupiter, spins a lot faster, once every 10 hours, than Mercury, which is just a tiny fraction the size of Jupiter and needs 58 Earth days for one spin around its axis. General observations. Both Earth and Moon ring hollow for hours after struck with meteorites, as measured by seismic stations on Earth and on the Moon. Earthquakes do not occur deeper than 450 miles, but down there, the supposedly molten magma would not create and release friction via earthquakes, and dash a viscous or molten mass equalizes tension. It does not accumulate tension, because it is flexible. Gravity experiments in mine shafts show that the balls pointing to the center of gravity point away from the center of the Earth, instead of towards it, as measured by the distance at the top and bottom of trolley balls hanging from very long wires into a mine shaft. Ellipsis points on ellipsis points with Inspector Klaus Jose. Observations at the Earth's poles. Welcome to Mr. Woo's pole anomalies. The temperature, as one gets past a certain latitude, increases as one approaches the poles, which is not supposed to happen. Arctic, and in less cases, Antarctic, explorers have reported in their ship's logs to have taken off their climate gear. This was before Gore-Tex. Floating flora and fauna near the northern polar region's ocean, seeds, flowers and trees are found at latitudes where none should be, and they are often very fresh, not decomposed from many months of floating in the ocean currents that might have brought them from far away. Spiders, bees, mosquitoes, moths and flies were found once past the cold and icy region below the North Pole. Northern Greenland is the mosquito capital of the world. Many bird species in the northern hemisphere migrate north and before winter. Birds in the southern hemisphere migrate south in their winter, to and if the poles are the coldest regions. It makes no sense, but flocks of millions of birds like the auk have been observed doing this, and they must have a very good reason. Presence of seal, auk, goose, seagull, duck, rabbit, wolf, fox, bear and other large animals at extreme northern latitudes. The exploration of Antarctica is much more scarce compared to Arctic explorers. The origin of icebergs around the North Pole. They are made of frozen sweet water and not frozen salt water. There is little, if any, precipitation of rain or snow, sweet water, in the polar regions. Salt water freezes to sea ice at low enough temperatures. There is no supply of sweet water to explain the existence of icebergs, which are hundreds of feet high, up to hundreds of miles long and dozens of miles wide. Icebergs around the North Pole are colored by red pollen of an unknown plant, as well as dust and edge a lot of it, including earth material on top of them. Massive wave-like or tidal movements in the Arctic polar region have been witnessed by many explorers. Waves which cracked and moved the ice floes around the explorer ships in a very major way that had their hair stand on end. Floating and deposited driftwood, including exotic species, is extremely abundant and sometimes stacked 15 ft 5 and high along the coasts in the polar region of Spitsbergen and Greenland, up to 86 degrees latitude north. Mammoth, elephant, woolly rhinoceros, hippopotamus, lion and hyena have been found in the ice from the North Pole that is also deposited on the coasts of Siberia. Entire forests of mammoth ivory have been found there. The stomach content of frozen mammoth has been found to contain tropical and digested plants that do not occur anywhere in the North and Polar region. Supposedly, the last time the mammoths were flopping around was during the last ice age. Children, not the Pixar animation films 1, 2 or 3, but many were found with their frozen meat good enough to give it to the sled dogs in Siberia for dinner or late lunch. Children, note from the editor, if these mammoths came out of inner earth via the huge freshwater rivers that flow outwards and freeze as they pass the northern polar opening, then the theory of a massive crustal shift of the earth which supposedly transported mammoths who had been peacefully chomping on tropical plants way up north into days, causing them to insta-freeze as a result of a polar reversal, as one argument. Less, Tilda C. Charles Hapgood, Maurice Cotterill, Patrick Gerald, Lithai and others. Instrument anomalies at the Earth's poles. Approaching the magnetic pole, the compass needle points down towards the dial end edge and passing the horizon, where the surface or Earth curves inward at the poles, like an apple into its center, only much more pronounced end edge the compass needle starts pointing up, behaving now like a vertical and not a horizontal instrument. The magnetic North Pole is not a specific point, it is a large area around the geographic North or South Poles, which do not exist as solid points on the surface. They are points in empty space. Magnetic and geographic poles have a different axis. As you know, the compass stops working in a horizontal plane, and actually indicates the location of a magnetic pole over a vast area. You can't circle the area around the geographic pole and always get a north reading with the compass. In short, there is no specific point, but an area where magnetic north or south is shown with a compass color Earth back. The questions we can't promise to answer right now. What about gravity? Center of gravity is in the approximate center of the 800-mile thick eggshell of the Earth, and works inside and outside of the planetary shell. The center of gravity is not at, or towards, the center of the Earth. What about the inner sun? What about it? What about the inner world? A huge topic, and an altogether perplexing reciprocal paradox. What about the outer world and the inner world together? WTF? Yes, we are going into landscapes of incredulities, I assure you. Can one see the openings when getting closer by land or air? No, but strange phenomena occur, like watery skies, the reflections along the lip of the Arctic hole where the ocean is reflected by the atmosphere. You would love to see it. Why haven't I heard about this before? I mean, seriously? Secrets are best getting out in the open. The woo-woo areas are best. I have most, if not all, the Hollow Earth classic books and websites. Have all these books about all these facts been suppressed, or banned, forgotten, ignored, ridiculed? Guess. What about Admiral Byrd's expeditions? Wasn't he in the newspapers? Excellent question. He will be focused on. He was indeed on radio and in newspapers, and commanded among other expeditions Operation High Jump and Edge, a Navy fleet that went after the disappeared German submarines and thousands of German people after World War II and Edge. It was to the South Pole, if I remember correctly. What is science saying about this? Corporate, private or state science that gets loaded into textbooks for indoctrination cannot deal with this for reasons that are obvious. This science has the role that the high priests used to have when the earth was flat. Editor's note, and now it is too late to lose the way you used to need to throw around Pink Floyd. Why don't I see this on Nat Geo, History, Discovery, and other high-quality corporate brainwashing networks? I was hoping you would ask. Can we see the polar openings from space? Absolutely, depending on your exact location and the weather patterns, your security clearance and the effectiveness of the selective memory delete process. After you have seen it, please look into this device now. Are satellite images of the polar region censored? Of course not. Hey, pigs fly, buddy. Some at least ellipsis points they fly north before winter, these dumb animals. Epilogue to the Hollow Earth Introlog. Ellipsis points and the Earth used to be flat. Then, a solid ball, like a magma ball in space with a solid crust. When in fact it is a sphere which rings like a bell for weeks and months when struck by meteorites and earthquakes. Ellipsis points. The ultimate woo-woo. Part 2, The Shemitist Conspiracy. In the first part of this Ultimate woo-woo series, the introduction to the revisited Hollow Earth theory, we sort of inexplored our way into the subject. There is a good reason for it. If we are not careful, we might fall inside the Hollow Earth, and that would be totally woo-woo. What compels me to take it easy with the coming avalanche of facts is the fact that a real deal Hollow Earth, taken and comprehended as a real thing, such as getting exposure on all TV stations at the same time worldwide, a real disclosure, would be about as shocking and unexpected as, well, for example, just to grab one out of the hot air, as shocking as the entire world cabal of psychopaths and sociopaths in central banking, government, military, pharmaceutical, Monsantical, recreational, vaccinicristoring, pedophiliacal, Satanish, religious, in a word, the Shemitist establishment and its lesser-known controlling agents of the named societies, lodges, brotherhoods, bangs and families, would decide to commit collective suicide by throwing themselves behind a train. They would probably miss, too, or claim it later in a Masonic court. You just know it wouldn't happen. And among them, some would say you go first, I follow later. There you have another example of why you should never tune a wet piano. Better to let it dry thoroughly, give it a good retuning, and then play your final chord. Just why am I not writing about this in the usual way? Because this is too big of a subject to just file away under mere woo-woo. We need to dissolve some boundaries and rattle some cages. We solve the mystery like Inspector Clouseau, Tilda Snap Fingers, or something like it. Mr. Wu's Holistic Detective Agency will handle this. I want to give this study about the Hollow Earth a different direction from the well-established presentations elsewhere of the many strange facts about it. We will get to that, but until then, we sprinkle the concepts and side issues around before the hard facts start raining down hard. Now, where were we, Mr. Wu? For the continuation of this Hollow Earth series, we are going to up the ante. In the introduction, we agreed to saddle the horse the wrong way and gallop right into the crowd of naysayers, flat earthers and skeptics. This time around, we are going to burn those who back then burned the round earthers at the stake. We've got heat and there's going to be blisters. The gloves are off, and so we cheerfully tie the priests and Shinitists to a pole and set them on fire, all the while having to listen to their laments, wild claims of privilege, plain intense and rather late apologies and insistence on the peer review process. Exactly what we expected. Tilda, a Shinitist, is a so-called scientist who polishes his shiz and shines his arse. This series will necessarily have to deal with Tilda regrettably huge side issues, some of which can be summed up as the ongoing suppression of facts and the applications of entirely woo-woo concepts to technology, such as electrogravitics or what you morons call free energy and flying saucers, all the while you thought the digital wristwatch, or the iPad, was a pretty neat idea. In other words, just why you feel that you are being treated like a dumb child. Sorry kids, nothing personal. These relevant side issues will have to be dealt with somewhere and somehow. In the case that the Hollow Earth turns out to be a complete and 100% proven bullshit idea, there is still this monster pink elephant standing around in your badly furnished apartment. And if it is not bullshit, then this side issue of mass mind control on all levels explains better than anything else just why you have a really hard time to accept the idea that the planets and the Earth are hollow as real, true and beautiful. A vintage German Flugscape with pedantic report labeled secret. It's not Audi, but Ursprungberg Technik it is. I am not saying that this is easy for me. It may not feel like it for you, but I do take the matter seriously, and I also try to never lose my sense of humor. Sooner or later I might have to decide for myself what the truth most likely seems to look like with this Hollow Earth thing. But then, if I make up my mind, I might be making up something. So far, I have not made up my mind and I can live with this lack of closure. I have really no problem with it. There is no rush to conclusions, while we are still presenting the issues. This is working like a temporary model that is being expanded and known better in the process. The model of the Hollow Earth still must stand several tests of logic, and several concepts need to be brought to the rational dissecting table and be checked against each other. The same applies to the Solid Earth model, by the way. So, this is a work in progress. I share the process with you, the reader. You cannot really participate in it actively, because it is my show, but you also have no idea before you what the outcome is going to be, because I don't have an idea. I am neither a proponent nor a debunker. Ultimately, this is not about whether a Hollow Earth and hollow planets can be proven to be true or not, because by the end of this Hollow Earth series you might still not have the ultimate answer to the ultimate woo-woo, but you may have learned something about other realms of this mystery, that of being human, and giving a hoot. There is always the possibility that we have to retract from the Hollow Earth and get back on traditional solid ground, including solid mantle and core, so we better not burn all the Shinitists all the way to a crisp, not just yet. If they happen to be right, these mainstreamers who decide which hypothesis is presented as the ultimate truth to the unwashed masses, then the vast body of evidence for hollow planets has really been very cleverly presented, folks, and has fooled a few of us who tried to check it out. And we humbly retreat and admit that certain stuff happens. But the Shinitists still can't have that their peer review process, that one is birthed beyond recognition. And while we are talking about heat, man-made global warming, or FGW, has something to do with it. Snellsburg in here. FGW may now, and quite rightfully so, be called man-made global fact burning. That tortoise with a pronouncement actually escaped them. Thanks, it was very telling. One great snafu equals situation normal, all F number $% F up. Man-made global warming in perspective. The Copenhagen 2009 Climate/Checkmate Summit featuring Barry Soetoro and the Norway Spiral, as the main sideshow was about to cheerfully levy global carbon taxes on carbon-based life forms already paying, tilde illegal, taxes to a criminal cartel like there was no tomorrow. But there is one. The same future as the definition for meditation. It's not what you think in this series. You will find several instances where we seem to digress into lateral areas and side issues. Meaning, I digress, but I take you with me for the ride. This is entirely necessary in order to somehow make it out of the woo-woo corner, as none of these hollow arguments and facts seem to stick. It most certainly not a lack of respect for you, since we have already said bye-bye to all those readers who got to the wrong website and or wrong article. Tilde this one, we can relax and breathe deeply. The morons have left the building. You see, the problem is, among other problems with humans, that you cannot get most people to just shut up and listen and pay attention for 5 minutes. They start arguing from the get-go, as if there was money to be made just by arguing. They must have watched too much TV and their brains are munchy much or something. Or they agree that, if their mouths stop moving then their brains might start working. What kind of a discussion is that? Some ultimate true lies. Here are examples of a few Shian's truths, since you asked for them. The origin of humans, and so-called Darwinism and evolution being used, tilde mangled, actually, to try to explain it. Einsteinism and relativity theory being schlepped around to explain space-time. They don't, and relativity does not line up with either quantum physics or the Bell non-locality. Of course they don't admit this. Whatever is totally woo-woo in the world of credentialed science is simply put at the bottom of the stack. ignored. Silly little dances go on around these lonely questions in case you insist on getting an answer. The Federal Reserve. It is not federal but private. It has no reserves but prints money out of thin air. It is not part of your use of the government, but an independent entity owned mostly by non-US citizens. Since 1913. Same people who have taught Nikola Tesla. One more. The origin of petroleum is not what you have been told. It is not based on dead forests, dinosaurs and plankton that got turned into black goo that burns and costs a lot. Petroleum is formed in the depths of the Earth's underbelly, where sufficient heat and pressure exists to cause the chemical process, and it seeps up from there. Tilde remember, it is lighter than water. It is not a non-renewable resource that can be priced like any, tilde artificially, scarce commodity. Peak oil is complete bullshit. We will not run out of oil, but we will run out of patience if we do not start fighting back against the outrageous lies that surround our average views of the world. How about fluoride in your water to protect your teeth? How about natural cures and prevention for cancer, like vitamin B17? What about that yellow cake? What about this and that illegal war? What about the UFOs and them aliens? How about all of this? WTF, tilde, where's the facts? You get the idea, you are being fooled whichever way you care to look. My Schmittist horse, in the case of cold and hard facts, and by the media propagation of politicians and assorted people of authority run by the social engineers, in the case of the warm and soft facts. Yes, it is rather pathetic. The biggest problem I see, and this is just my personal take, is the fact that once you start realizing that you have been had, you lose your apparently firm ground under your feet. And we all need to stand somewhere, don't we? It is much more convenient for the inherently lazy human to just call the messengers of these facts subversives, loonies, conspiracy nuts, amateurs, and worse. The facts, for those who care. This is what David Krep replied to a reader's email. My kind bye. Date, the 24th of November 2007. Dear Tilda, so and so, you're saying that the potentially valuable information on my website will become totally uninteresting and the work of a charlatan, unless I've been to the university. I like your sense of humor. I have university qualifications in modern languages, translation, and technical sciences. But I regard this as irrelevant, because I think that what anybody says or writes should be judged on its intrinsic merits. Many of my articles are about fundamental differences of opinion between scientists with equally excellent credentials in a particular field. So a university education does not preclude serious errors, even in one's own specialism. I'm also a great believer in self-education. Regards, David Krep. So, this is an ongoing research project, the revisited hollow earth theory, the ultimate lonely thing to do. End of lines, for now. Source 8. The polar body of evidence has been very important to the development of the modern hollow earth theory. In fact, the observations of the polar explorers of yesteryear brought new life to ancient folklore to this effect, folklore of the Tibetan, Hindu and the Nordic civilizations. For example, Marshall B. Gardner, in A Journey to the Earth Center, cites Lord Barrington in his communication with the Royal Society. Thusly Barrington recalled to the Royal Society that as early as 1663 its secretary at that time had examined a traveler lately returned from Greenland, and that this traveler had told of a Hollander captain who claimed that he had come within half a degree of the pole, and corroborated it by showing this journal, the entries being attested by Disney. Now, in view of later explorations, it does not matter just how accurate the sailor was. The point is simply that even in those early days it was possible to get much nearer the pole than was supposed at the time, and simply for the reason that the water was open, as one went north. But Barrington had instance after instance of the same kind. He mentioned in particular two Hollander whalers who in the 17th century sailed to 89 degrees and found no ice but a free and open sea. In 1754, one Mr. Stevens, on board a Dutch whaler, noted that he did not find the cold excessive, and used little more than common clothing, and met with but little ice. Arctic anomalies such as these inspired the notion that openings to a warmer world lay somewhere within the Arctic region. As early as 1818, former Captain John Cleve Sims of Ohio was actively promulgating the idea that the Earth was hollow, and the Norwood Review of England, in its issue of May 10, 1884, reported, "We do not admit that there is ice up to the pole once inside the Great Ice Barrier. A new world breaks upon the explorer. The climate is mild like that of England, and afterwards, balmy like that of the Greek Isles." In Philippians 2:10, we find this reference, that at the name of Jesus every knee shall bow of things in heaven, and things in earth, and things under the earth. This quote from Philippians mentions that knees of things, creatures, shall bow. These things are all alive. Among these are included the things which live under the earth. Is this a reference to subterranean life? In the book of Revelations, 5:3, we find a similar statement, but this time it specifically mentions subterranean humans, and no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither look thereon. The suggestion here is that there are also men under the earth. A gentleman by the name of Paul Gadolf contacted me one day to inform me that he had done a comprehensive study of the Bible to see whether there were any biblical references to a hollow earth. He did this as an exercise for his friends and family. He ended up writing a 170-page book called On the Face of the Deep. Gadolf told me he believes the following reference indicates the existence of a polar hole in the Arctic. In Job 26:7, in the Old Testament, one reads, "He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing." In the book of Enoch 76:6-7, we read, "7 rivers I beheld upon earth, greater than all rivers, one of which takes its course from the west, into a great sea its water flows. To come from the north to the sea, their waters flowing into the Erythraean Sea, on the east, and with respect to the remaining 4, they take their course in the cavity of the north, to their sea, the Erythraean Sea, and to our port into a great sea, where also it is said there is a desert." In Plato's Republic we find mention of a god who sits at the center of the earth who is responsible for our religions. The Tibetan Buddhists also have references to a vast underground empire populated by millions of people and ruled by a man called Rinpoche and also referred to as the king of the world. The empire is called Agartha and its capital city is Shambhala. A Hindu gentleman once wrote me an email from India and told me that Hindu scriptures also mention a vast underworld. Note, left square bracket, the Puranic narrations of the sons of Sagaro and their pursuit of the sacrificial horse, as well as the narration of the appearance of the Kapi avatar take place in the hollow portion of the earth. Right square bracket. In the early days of my interest in the hollow earth theory I stumbled upon an Eskimo legend of the hole in the sea. Could this be a reference to a polar hole? Some people like Theodore Brillian and Nicholas Roerich tried to find this underground empire earlier this century. Roerich's discussions with a Tibetan Lama priest in 1928 resulted in him being told that if you go far enough north then you will see a reflection from the underground empire. He was also told that the entrance to the underground empire lay far across the sea. What this Tibetan was saying was indeed very similar to what one would expect from the hollow earth theory. In recent years another Tibetan Lama who visited the USA stated that Agartha could be reached by flying directly north from India. Could it be that a polar hole somewhere in a northern ocean leads one straight into a vast underground empire within the earth? Source 9. Tilde big props and shout out to 1 trillion. Hyperborea and the quest for mystical enlightenment. Far north, somewhere near the icy regions of the North Pole, legend speaks of an ancient and mostly forgotten civilization. Mythical in character, the Hyperborean civilization is said to have flourished in the northernmost region of planet Earth at a time when the area was suitable for human habitation. According to certain esoteric systems and spiritual traditions, Hyperborea was the terrestrial and celestial beginning of civilization, the home of original man. Some theories postulate Hyperborea was the original Garden of Eden, the point where the earthly and heavenly planes meet. And it is said man transgressed divine law in this golden age civilization, the ultimate price being his banishment to the outside world. Man ventured into other regions of Earth, establishing new civilizations, bringing to an end this great and glorious golden age. The Golden Age is central to manifold ancient traditions and myths. Significantly, the Golden Age appears most frequent in the traditions of cultures stretching from India to northern Europe and the area directly beneath the polar regions. Jocelyn Godwin, in Arctis, the Polar Myth in Science, Symbolism and Nazi Survival, says, the memory or imagination of the Golden Age seems to be a particularity of the cultures that cover the area from India to northern Europe ellipsis points, but in the ancient Middle East there is an obvious relic of the Golden Age in Genesis, as the Garden of Eden, where humanity walked with the gods before the fall. The Egyptians spoke of past epochs ruled by godkins. Babylonian mythology ellipsis points had a scheme of 3 ages, each lasting, while the vernal till the spring equinox persists through 4 signs of the zodiac. The first of these, under the dominion of Enu, as a Golden Age, ended by the flood. The Iranian Avesta texts tell of the 1,000-year golden reign of Enu, the first man and the first king, under whose rule cold and heat, old age, death and sickness were unknown. The most fully developed theory of this kind, and probably the oldest one, is the Hindu doctrine of the 4 yugas. The 4 ages in this system are the Krita or Satya Yuga, tilde 4 units, Trita Yuga, tilde 3, Dwapara Yuga, tilde 2, and Kali Yuga, tilde 1, the whole 10-fold period making up one Meta Yuga. The Krita Yuga corresponds to the Golden Age, the Kali Yuga to the current period of time. Every description of the Golden Age period relates how the gods walked with men in a perfect and harmonious environment balanced between the terrestrial and celestial. Humanity suffered no sickness and no aging in this timeless paradise. After the fall, man fell into time and suffering, forfeiting the gift of immortality. Madame Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophical Society, claimed the second root race originated in Hyperborea before the later races of Lemuria and Atlantis. The Russian metaphysician Alexander Dugin says that it was the home of the solar people, connected to what is now northern Russia. Solar people, Alexander Dugin explains, are a cultural spiritual type who are creative, energetic and spiritual. They are the opposite of lunar people, a psycho-spiritual type who are materialistic, conservative and wary of change. The ancient Greeks had a legend of Hyperborea, a land of perpetual sun beyond the north line. Hecataeus, tilde circa 500 BC, says that the holy place of the Hyperboreans, which was built after the pattern of the spheres, lay in the regions beyond the land of the Celts on an island in the ocean. According to popular accounts, the god Apollo's temple at Delphi was founded by individuals from Hyperborea. The Greek lyric poet Hecataeus, approximately 600 BC, sang of the actual or mystical journey of Apollo to the land of the Hyperboreans. O King Apollo, son of great Zeus, whom my father did furnish forth at thy birth with golden headband and lyre shell, and giving thee moreover a swan-drawn chariot to drive, would have thee go to Delphi ellipsis points, but nevertheless, once mounted, thou badest by swan's flight to the land of the Hyperboreans. The wearing of a star embroidered robe by the king and ruler of the world Dash the heavenly sphere serving, as a symbol of the earthly one Dash is a custom that can be traced to the Hyperboreans. Embroidered in gold on blue silk were the figures of the sun, moon and stars. Such robes were worn by the kings of ancient Rome and Julius Caesar, as well as Augustus and the Roman emperors. Earthenware statuettes found in a grave in Yugoslavia show the Hyperborean Apollo in a chariot drawn by swans. The god wears, on his neck and breast, yellow figures of the sun and stars. On his head is a wreath crowned with a headband that has a zigzag pattern. His robe, which reaches to the ground, is dark blue with yellow designs. Collapse of Hyperborea. One of the most popular theories for the collapse of Hyperborea was a physical inclination, catastrophe, of the Earth's axis. Man's transgression of divine law caused a shift in the metaphysical balance, the effect of which was catastrophic on the Earth plane. Giulio Coppola, the noted Italian metaphysician, explains that at this point the first cycle of history closed, and that of the second, the Atlantean, began. The memory of this Arctic seat is the patrimony of the traditions of many people, in the form either of real geographic illusions, or of symbols of its function and original significance, often transferred to a superhistorical significance, or else applied to other centers that may be considered as copies of the original one. Ellipsis points. Above all, one will notice the interplay of the Arctic theme with the Atlantic theme. Ellipsis points. It is known that the astrophysical phenomenon of the inclination of the Earth's axis causes a change of climate from one epoch to another. Moreover, as tradition tells, this inclination took place at a given moment, and in fact through the alignment of a physical and a metaphysical fact, as if a disorder in nature were reflecting a certain situation of a spiritual order. Ellipsis points. At any rate, it was only at a certain moment that ice and eternal night descended on the polar region. Then, with the enforced emigration from that seat, the first cycle closed and the second opened, initiating the second great era, the Atlantean cycle. The memory of the Golden Age, although rendered in an archetypal or mythological form, serves a superhistorical purpose. This is why the remembrance of the ancient civilization of Atlantis is sometimes enmeshed with that of Hyperborea. We cannot expect to prove the physical existence of these civilizations. All myths are known to have a historical basis. Transmitted primarily by oral tradition, they are wrapped in a catchy and simple tale that ensures their survival and transmittal down through the ages. Myth serves an extremely vital function and a recollection of our beginnings, a knowledge of where we are heading, and what we are supposed to do. It is only now in the Kali Yuga that we have disconnected from tradition, losing the ability to correctly interpret and understand myths with historical kernels of truth. Hyperborea revived. The legend of Hyperborea revived during the 18th and 19th centuries when a flurry of books were published dealing with the idea that civilization had first appeared not in the Middle East, but somewhere else. The popular theory of the day postulated that the so-called Aryans, were superior and more intelligent than Semites, till the Middle East peoples. Therefore, logically, civilization could not have originated in the Middle East and Hebrew was probably not the first language. The Frenchmen of the Enlightenment were in no doubt that Eden was situated on higher ground. The Germans similarly, who were looking for their offloading, also sought to be free of a history tied to the Mediterranean and Middle East regions. British and German scholars studied ancient Indian, till Vedic, civilization and lent the Sanskrit language. Many believe Sanskrit the original language of the Aryans. With new sources of knowledge from ancient Egypt, Chaldea, China and India, researchers were treading on dangerous ground as far as questioning man's origins. Biblical history was still strictly upheld and moving too far from this historical boundary could have been silenced. Writers such as Jean Sylvain Bailey, approximately 1736 to 1793, The Reverend Drive, William Warren, 1800s, Al Bangor Tillet, approximately 1856 to 1929, and H.S. Spencer, approximately 1900s, developed out theories, often borrowing from earlier sources, attempting to prove man's origins in the polar region. Tillet's book The Arctic Home in the Vedas, Tillet published 1903, begins by stating the well-known fact that warm weather remains in the Arctic regions, which shows the climate was far different during the interglacial period. According to Tillet, scientists do concede the existence, in the past, of a warm circumpolar continent, and the circumstances there would not have been nearly unfathomable, as imagined. Tillet was convinced the ancient Indian Vedic texts point unmistakably to a realm of the gods where the sun rises and sets once a year, showing that their writers could understand the astronomical conditions at the North Pole. Tillet, who had a perfect mastery of Vedic language, placed the original Arctic home existing around circa 10,000 BC just prior to its destruction and the beginning of the last ice age. His book had little impact in the West but was popular in India. When the learned Zoroastrian H.S. Spencer wrote his book The Aryan Ecliptic Cycle, approximately 1965, a development of Tillet's work, he was able to obtain endorsements from Sir S. Radhakrishna, then President of India, as well as from dignitaries of the Theosophical Society in Amir and the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. Spencer's approach commenced not with the Vedic but the Zoroastrian scriptures, going further than Tillet in tracing the progress of the Aryans from the north to their new homes, and the schisms that beset them on the way. Spencer's Aryans made their presence felt, after they traveled far and wide. They molded the religions and cultures of Egypt, Sumeria, Babylon, and of the Semites, gathered were worshippers of feminine lunar deities. However, the search for a terrestrial Hyperborea by many researchers and the movement of an original race has been extremely difficult and presumptuous. Proving human habitation possible at the North Pole somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 BC is no mean feat, particularly if you were living in the 18th century. The numerous theories posited not throwing contradictory or tendentious evidence has served only to discredit the whole notion of Hyperborea. The same could be said of theories attempting to prove the existence of the lost continent of Atlantis. The drive to prove the actuality of the terrestrial Hyperborea has overshadowed its occult and symbolic importance. The spiritual pole. In the quest to discover the physical location of Hyperborea, most writers overlooked the possibility that the mythology served a special symbolic and spiritual purpose. What if the truth behind the legend was esoteric, and not exoteric, as some even today still maintain? Many traditions speak of a supreme spiritual center or supreme country. The supreme country that does not necessarily lay at a specific earthly point, but exists in a primordial state, and affected by terrestrial cataclysms. The supreme country, commonly regarded as polar in orientation, symbolically is always represented as being at the axis of the world and edge, and in most cases is referred to as a sacred mountain. Rene Bounin in his book The Pin of the World says, almost every tradition has its name for this mountain, such as the Hindu Meru, the Persian Alborz, and the Mount Salvat of Western Grail legend. There is also the Arab mountain Kat and the Greek Olympus, which has in many ways the same significance. This consists of a region that, like the terrestrial paradise, has become inaccessible to ordinary humanity, and that is beyond the reach of those cataclysms which upset the human world at the end of certain cyclic periods. This region is the authentic supreme country which, according to certain Vedic and Avestan texts, was originally sited towards the North Pole, even in the literal sense of the word. Although it may change its localization according to the different phases of human history, it still remains polar in a symbolic sense, because essentially it represents the fixed axis around which everything revolves. The Vedic texts say the supreme country is known as Puradesha, also called the heart of the world. It is the word from which the Chaldeans formed parts, and Westerners paradise. There is notably another name for it, probably even older than Puradesha. This name is Tula, called by the Greeks Thuli. Common to regions from Russia to Central America, Tula represented the primordial state from which spiritual power emanated. It is known that the Mexican Tula owes its origin to the Toltecs, who came, it is said, from Estlin, the land in the middle of the water, which is evidently Atlantis. They brought the name Tula from their country of origin and gave it to a center which consequently must have replaced, to a certain extent, that of the lost continent. On the other hand, the Atlantean Tula must be distinguished from the Hyperborean Tula, which latter represents the first and supreme center ellipsis points. In this case M-Tula representing a center of spiritual authority and does not remain fixed in a geographical location. Gunaj states that the Atlantean cycle, successor to the Hyperborean cycle, is associated with Tula. The Atlantean Tula is an image of the original primordial state situated in a northern or polar location. As world cycles progress onward, the supreme seat of spiritual power regresses further and further into hiding and obscurity. This, of course, is deliberate and predictable, as humanity descends into the end of the age, all event progressively enmeshing itself in the material plane until the reversal of established world order is imposed. It should be emphasized here that Tula, or the center of spiritual authority, constitutes the fixed point known symbolically to all traditions as the polar axis around which the world rotates. Metaphysically speaking, the world rotates around this seat of power, even if it's not geographically north or south. In the Buddhist tradition, Chakravarti literally means he who makes the wheel turn, which is to say the one who, being at the center of all things, directs all movement without himself participating, or who is, to use Aristotle's words, the unmoving mover. The turning of the world, the pole and axis, combine to depict a wheel in the Celtic, Chaldean and Hindu traditions. Such is the true significance of this swastika, seen worldwide from the Far East to the Far West, which is intrinsically the sign of the pole. The pole and mystical enlightenment. It is in medieval Iran that we find extant literature on the spiritual pole and the experience of mystical ascension. The Iranian Sufis, drawing not only on Islam but on the Mazdian, Manichaean, Hermetic, Gnostic and Platonic traditions, blended a sacred knowledge said to be scientific, mystical and philosophically practical. Esoterically. Point. The Persian philosophers situated the Orient neither to the east, nor to the south, whither they faced in prayer towards the Kaaba. The Orient sought by the mystic, the Orient that cannot be located on outer maps, is in the direction of the north, beyond the north. Joe the Man of Light in Iranian Sufism, Ibn recording, 1978, about this whole reigns of perpetual darkness, says the recital of Halai Ibn Laksan, one of the visionary recitals of Avicenna Tilda Ibn Sina. Each year the rising sun shines upon it at a fixed time. He who confronts that darkness and does not hesitate to plunge into it for fear of difficulties will come to a vast space, boundless and filled with light. Tilda Ibn, this darkness, says Corbin, is the ignorance of the natural man. To pass through it is a terrifying and painful experience, for it ruins and destroys all the patencies and norms on which the natural man lives and dependent ellipsis points Tilda Ibn, but it must be faced consciously before one can acquire the saving gnosis of the light beyond. The darkness around the pole, annually pierced by the sun's rays, is at once terrestrial and symbolic. On the one hand, this is the situation at the North Pole, where there are 6 months of night and 6 of day. It is characteristic of esoteric tradition that the same image is developed on 2 or more levels. But as Corbin and Guna never tired of pointing out, the symbolic level is not a fanciful construct on the basis of hard terrestrial fact, it is quite the other way round. In the present case, the mystical experience of penetrating the darkness at the pole is the fundamental reality and the authentic experience of the individual. The fact that the set of the material world reflects the celestial geography is what is contingent. In brief, in this teaching as in Platonism, it is the supersensible realm that is real, and the material realm that is a shadow of it. The seeker, through deep meditation on spiritual matters, succeeds in entering a world of mystical experience, and makes a pilgrimage to Hyperborea that cannot be discovered from maps. Eristheus, the Greek poet, in Shamanic Rapture, is said to have traveled to Hyperborea while possessed by Apollo. Mystical soul travel to Hyperborea is common in ancient Greek literature. The journey to this pole is sometimes illustrated as the ascent of a column of light, extending from the depths of hell to the lucid paradise in the cosmic north. As previously mentioned, the pole is also a mountain, called Mount Kaf in Islamic tradition, whose ascent, like Dante's climbing of the mountain of purgatory, represents the pilgrim's progress through spiritual states. Gunan, in The Kin Lord of the World, explains the idea evoking the representation under discussion is essentially one of stability, that is itself a characteristic of the pole. The mountain, referred to as an island, remains immovable amidst the ceaseless agitation of the waves, a disturbance that reflects that of the external world. Accordingly, it is necessary to cross the sea of passions in order to reach the Mount of Salvation, the sanctuary of peace. Our search for Hyperborea is our desire to return to Puradesha or Paradise the primordial spring of man's original existence. The importance of knowing the terrestrial location of the lost civilization at the northern regions is thus overshadowed by its symbolic relevance. To seek Hyperborea is to quest for spiritual enlightenment. The mountain, the island, the immovable rock, fixed in a polar orientation, relays a symbolic representation of our search for ultimate reality. Its immovability anchors us to this important task. End time spent. The word Agard is of Buddhist origin. It refers to the subterranean world or empire in whose existence all true Buddhists fervently believe. They also believe that this subterranean world has millions of inhabitants and many cities, all under the supreme domination of the subterranean world capital, Shambhala, where dwells the supreme ruler of this empire, known in the Orient as the King of the world. It is believed that he gave his orders to the Dalai Lama of Tibet, who was his terrestrial representative. His message is being transmitted through certain secret tunnels connecting the subterranean world with Tibet. Similar mysterious tunnels honeycomb Brazil. Brazil in the west and Tibet in the east seem to be the two parts of the earth where contact between the subterranean world and the surface world may be most easily achieved, due to the existence of these tunnels. The famous Russian artist, philosopher and explorer, Nicholas Roerich, who traveled extensively in the Far East, claimed that Lhasa, capital of Tibet, was connected by a tunnel with Shambhala, capital of the subterranean empire of Agard. The entrance of this tunnel was guarded by lamas who were sworn to keep its actual whereabouts a secret from outsiders, by order of the Dalai Lama. A similar tunnel was believed to connect the secret chambers at the base of the Pyramid of Gizeh with the subterranean world, by which the pharaohs established contact with the gods or supermen of the underworld. The various gigantic statues of early Egyptian gods and kings, as those of Buddha found throughout the Orient, represent subterranean supermen who came to the surface to help the human race. They are generally represented as sexless. They were emissaries of Agard, the subterranean paradise which it is the goal of all true Buddhists to reach. Buddhist traditions state that Agard was first colonized many thousands of years ago, when a holy man led a tribe which disappeared underground. The gypsies are supposed to come from Agard, which explains their restlessness on the earth's surface and their continual travels to regain their lost home. This reminds one of Noah, who was really an Atlantean, who saved a worthy group prior to the coming of the flood that submerged Atlantis. It is believed that he brought this group to the high plateau of Brazil, where they settled in subterranean cities, connected with the surface by tunnels, in order to escape from poisoning by the radioactive fallout produced by the nuclear war the Atlanteans fought, which brought on the flood that submerged their continent. The Subterranean civilization Oyaard is believed to represent a continuation of Atlantean civilization, which, having learned the lesson of the futility of war, remained in a state of peace ever since, making stupendous scientific progress uninterrupted by the setbacks of recurrent wars, as our surface civilization has been. Their civilization is many thousands of years old. Atlantis sank about 11,500 years ago, while ours is very young, only a few centuries old. Subterranean scientists are able to wield forces of nature we know nothing about, as demonstrated by their flying saucers, which are operated by a new, unknown source of energy, more subtle than atomic energy. Ossendowski claims that the empire of Agard consists of a network of subterranean cities connected with each other by tunnels through which vehicles pass at tremendous speed, both under land and under the ocean. These people live under the benign reign of a government headed by the King of the world. They represent descendants of the lost continents of Lemuria and Atlantis, as well as the original perfect race of Hyperboreans, the race of gods. During various epochs in history, the Agardan supermen or gods came to the surface to teach the human race and save it from wars, catastrophes and destruction. The coming of the flying saucers soon after the first atomic explosion in Hiroshima represents another such visitation, but to HLS time the gods themselves did not appear among men, but they sent their emissaries. The Indian epic, Ramayana describes Rama as such an emissary from Agard coming on an aerial vehicle, which was probably a flying saucer. A Chinese tradition speaks of divine teachers coming on aerial vehicles. Similarly, the founder of the Inca dynasty, Manco Capac, came the same way. One of the greatest of Agardan teachers in America was Quetzalcoatl, the great prophet of the Mayas and Aztecs and of the Indians of the Americas in general, both in South and North America. That he was a stranger among them, coming from a different race, Atlantean, is indicated by his being fair, while they were dark, his being tall, while they were short, his being bearded, while they were beardless. He was reverenced as a savior by the Indians of Mexico, Yucatan and Guatemala long before the coming of the white man. The Aztecs called him God of Abundance and the Morning Star. His name Quetzalcoatl means feathered serpent, meaning a teacher of wisdom, symbolized by the serpent who flies. He was given this name because he came on an aerial vehicle, which appears to have been a flying saucer. He probably came from the subterranean world, because, after he remained some time with the Indians, he mysteriously vanished the same way as he came, and was believed to have returned to the subterranean world from which he came. Quetzalcoatl is described as having been a man of good appearance and grave countenance, with a white skin and beard, and dressed in a long flowing white garment. He was also called Humek, because of his great goodness and continence. He taught the Indians the way of virtue and tried to save them from vice by giving them laws and counsel to restrain them from lust and to practice chastity. He taught pacifism and condemned violence in all forms. He instituted a vegetarian diet, with corn as a principal food, and taught fasting and body hygiene. According to the South American archaeologist, Harold Wilkins, Quetzalcoatl was also the spiritual teacher of the ancient inhabitants of Brazil. After remaining some time with the Indians, and seeing how little they cared to follow his teachings, except his recommendation to plant and eat corn, as a basic food in place of meat, Quetzalcoatl departed, telling them that someday he would return. That this visitor from heaven left the same way in which he came, on a flying saucer, is indicated by the following facts. When Cortez invaded Mexico, the Emperor Montezuma believed that the predicted return of Quetzalcoatl had occurred, because a fireball then gyrated over Mexico City, making the people wail and scream, setting the temple of the war god on fire. This fireball was believed to have been the flying saucer on which Quetzalcoatl traveled. Osiris was another such subterranean god. According to Donnelly, in his book, Atlantis the Antediluvian World, the gods of the ancients were the rulers of Atlantis and members of a superhuman race which governed the human race. Before the destruction of their continent, which they foresaw, they traveled by flying saucer through the polar opening to the subterranean world in the hollow interior of the earth, where they continued to live ever interior, since the empire of Agard, wrote Ossimbowski in his book Beasts, Men and Gods, extends through subterranean tunnels to all parts of the world. In this book he speaks of a vast network of tunnels constructed by a prehistoric race of remotest antiquity, which passed under both oceans and continents, through which swift-moving vehicles traveled. The empire of which Ossimbowski speaks and concerning which he learned about from Lavas in the Far East, during his travels in Mongolia, obviously consists of subterranean cities inside the Earth's crust, which should be differentiated from those existing in its hollow center. Thus there are two subterranean worlds, one more superficial and one in the center of the Earth. Huberman, whose book on flying saucers and the subterranean world we previously mentioned, believes that there exist many subterranean cities at various depths, between the Earth's crust and its hollow interior. Concerning the inhabitants of these subterranean cities, he writes, "This other humanity has reached an elevated grade of civilization, economic and social organization and cultural and scientific progress, in comparison with which the humanity which lives on the Earth's surface are a race of barbarians." In his book, Huberman shows a diagram of the Earth's interior, showing various subterranean cities at various depths, connected with each other by tunnels. He describes these cities as existing in immense cavities in the Earth. The city of Shambhala, the capital of the subterranean empire, he portrays as existing at the center of the Earth, in its hollow interior, rather than inside its solid crust. Ossimbowski writes, "All the subterranean caverns of America are inhabited by an ancient people who disappeared from the world. These people and the subterranean regions, where they dwell are under the supreme authority of the king of the world. Both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans were once the home of vast continents which later became submerged, and their inhabitants found refuge in the subterranean world. The profounder caverns are illuminated by a resplendent light which permits the growing of cereals and other vegetables, and gives the inhabitants a long lifespan free from disease. In this world exists a large population and many tribes." In his book, The Coming Race, Paul Merlin describes a subterranean civilization far in advance of our own, which existed in a large cavity in the Earth, connected with the surface by a tunnel. This immense cavity was illuminated by a strange light which did not require lamps to produce it, but appeared to result from the electrification of the atmosphere. This light supported plant life and enabled the subterranean people to grow their foods. The inhabitants of the utopia, described by Levin, were vegetarians. They had certain apparatuses by which, instead of walking, they flew. They were free from disease and had a perfect social organization so that each received what he needed, without exploitation of one by another. It is claimed that the Earth's crust is honeycombed by a network of tunnels passing under the ocean from continent to continent and leading to subterranean cities in large cavities in the Earth. These tunnels are especially abundant in South America, especially under Brazil, which was the chief center of Atlantean colonization, and we may believe they were constructed by the Atlanteans. Most famous of these tunnels is the roadway of the Incas, which stretches for several hundred miles south of Lima, Peru, and passes under Cusco, Huaynaco and the Three Peaks, proceeding to the Atacambo Desert. Another branch opens in Arica, Chile, visited by Madame Blavatsky. It is claimed that the Incas used these tunnels to escape from the Spanish conquerors and the Inquisition, when entire armies entered them, carrying with them their gold and treasures on the backs of llamas, which they did when the Spanish conquerors first came. Their mysterious disappearance at this time, leaving only the race of Quechua Indians behind, is also explained by their entering these tunnels. It is claimed that when Atahualpa, the last of the Inca kings, who was brutally murdered by Pizarro, the gold that was being carried to his ransom on a train of 11,000 pack llamas, found refuge in these tunnels. It is claimed that these tunnels had a form of artificial lighting and were built by the race that had constructed Huaynaco long before the first Inca appeared in Peru. Since the Incas who entered these tunnels to escape from the Spaniards were never seen since and disappeared from the Earth's surface, it is probable that they continued to live in illuminated subterranean cities to which these tunnels led. These mysterious tunnels, an enigma to archaeologists, exist in greatest number under Brazil, where they open on the surface in various places. The most famous is in the Ronqueter Mountains of northeast Mato Grosso too, where Colonel Fawcett was heading when last seen. It is claimed that the Atlantean city for which he searched was not the ruins of a dead city on the surface but a subterranean city with still living Atlanteans as its inhabitants, and that he and his son Jack reached this city and are still living therein. This is the belief of Professor D. Souza, Commander Strauss and O.C. Huberman, whom we have mentioned before. The Ronqueter tunnel opening is guarded by fierce Javits Indians who kill anyone who dares to enter uninvited and who might molest the subterranean dwellers whom they respect and reverence. The Mercego Indians also guard these secret tunnel openings leading to subterranean cities in the Ronqueter mountain region of Mato Grosso. We quote a letter to the author from an American named Carl Huny, who lived many years in Mato Grosso and made a special study of this subject. The entrance to the caverns is guarded by Mercego Indians, who are a dark-skinned, undersized race of great physical strength. Their sense of smell is more developed than that of the best bloodhounds. Even if they approve of you and let you enter the caverns, I am afraid that you will be lost to the present world, because they guard the secret very carefully and may not let those who enter leave. This may have happened to Colonel Fawcett and his son Jack, who are believed to have entered a tunnel leading to a subterranean city in the Ronqueter Mountains, never to return. The Mercego Indians live in caverns and go out at night into the surrounding jungles, but they have no contact with the subterranean dwellers below, inhabiting a subterranean city in which they form a self-contained community and have a considerable population. It is believed that the subterranean cities they inhabit were first constructed by the Atlanteans. One thing is certain, that no radioactive fallout can reach them. No one knows whether those who live in these ancient Atlantean subterranean cities are Atlanteans themselves or others who settled there after their original builders were gone. The name of the mountain range, where these Atlantean subterranean cities exist, is Roncader in northeast Mato Grosso. If you go in quest of these subterranean cities, take your life in your own hands, as you may never be heard of again, like Colonel Fawcett. When I was in Brazil, I heard a lot about the underground caverns and subterranean cities. They are, however, a long way from Quebec. They are near the Rio Araguaia, which empties into the Amazon. They are to the northeast of Quebec at the foot of the tremendously long mountain range named Roncader. I desisted to investigate further, because I heard that the Brazeco Indians jealously guard the entrance to the tunnels from people who are not sufficiently developed, because they do not want trouble. In the first place, they do not want anyone who is still inept in commercialism and who has a desire for money. There are also caverns in Asia, and Tibetan travelers mention them. But as far as I know, in Brazil are the biggest ones, and they exist at 3 different levels. I am sure I would get permission if I wanted to join them, and they would accept me as one of theirs. I know they use no money at all, and their society is organized on a strictly democratic basis. People do not become aged and live in everlasting harmony. This subterranean utopia mentioned by Mr. Huey, now residing in New York, seems to resemble greatly the one described by Bulwer Lytton in his book, The Coming Race. Lytton was a Rosicrucian and probably based his novel on occult information concerning existing subterranean cities. The ruins of a number of Atlantean cities were found in northern Mato Grosso and the Amazon territory, indicating that Atlanteans once colonized this country. Some years ago, an English schoolteacher, hearing rumors of the lost Atlantean city on a high plateau in this region, went to find it. He did, but the hardships of the journey cost his life. Before he died, he sent by carrier pigeon a note describing a magnificent city he discovered, whose streets were lined by high gold statues. If the Atlanteans once colonized Brazil and constructed cities in Mato Grosso on its surface, why did they build subterranean cities there? It could not have been to escape the deluge that submerged Atlantis and outlying areas, because Mato Grosso is a high plateau where floodwaters could not have reached. The South American archaeologist, Harold Wilkins, offers another theory that the subterranean cities were built to escape the radioactive fallout resulting from a nuclear war, the Atlanteans thought. This seems to be a very reasonable explanation, or otherwise here would be no reason to undergo the great labor of excavating the earth and constructing subterranean cities when the Atlanteans already had magnificent cities on the earth's surface. If and when we are endangered by a nuclear war, we, too, will have to find refuge inside the earth and dwell there in illuminated subterranean cities and produce our foods under this light. It would of course be much easier to join existing subterranean cities constructed by the Atlanteans thousands of years ago, who vastly surpassed us in engineering skill, than to construct our own. If friendly contact with subterranean dwellers could be established, when war came, or even before, when radioactive fallout increases beyond the danger point and menaces our survival, it would be to our advantage to contact these subterranean cities and, if we are admitted, to establish residence in them. There is no old age in a garden and no death. It is a society in which everyone is young looking, even if many centuries or even thousands of years of age. This seems incredible to surface dwellers exposed to the harmful effects of solar radiation and the ion intoxication of food poisoning from a wrong diet. The symptoms of old age are not the natural result of the passage of time nor an assumed aging process, but to adverse biological conditions and habits. Senility is a disease, and since the gardens are free from disease, they do not grow old. The superior scientific culture of the subterranean people, of which their flying saucers are an evident example, is the result of superior brain development and more energetic brains. This is due to the fact that their vital energies flow up to their brain, rather than being dissipated through the sexual channel, as among so-called civilized Circace races. In fact, sex indulgence is completely out of their lives. Because of their fruit diet, their endocrines are in a state of perfect balance and harmonious functioning, as in little children, and are not stimulated to abnormal activity by metabolic toxins, as produced by such foods as meat, fowl, fish and eggs, and by such aphrodisiacs, as salt, pepper, coffee, tobacco and alcohol. By keeping their bloodstream pure and free from toxins, the subterranean people are able to live in complete continence, conserving all vital energies and converting them into superior brain power. Their superior scientific achievements result from the fact that their brains are superior to ours in intellectual development. Concerning the garden, Professor Henry J. de Souza, president of the Brazilian Theosophical Society and a leading authority on the subterranean world, in his magazine, published an article he wrote, Does Shangri-La Exist? From which we quote, Among all races of mankind, back to the dawn of time, there existed a tradition concerning the existence of a sacred land or terrestrial paradise, where the highest ideals of humanity were living realities. This concept is found in the most ancient writings and traditions of the peoples of Europe, Asia Minor, China, India, Egypt and the Americas. This sacred land, it is said, can be known only to persons who are worthy, pure and innocent, for which reason it constitutes the central theme of the dreams of childhood. The road that leads to this blessed land, this invisible world, this esoteric and occult domain, constitutes the central quest and master key of all mystery teachings and systems of initiation in the past, present and future. This magic key is the open sesame that unlocks the door to a new and marvelous world. The old Rosicrucians designated it by the French word vitriol, which is a combination of the first letters of the sentence, Vista interioritari rectificando in omnia lapidum, to indicate that in the interior of the earth is hidden the true mystery. The path that leads to this hidden world is the way of initiation. In ancient Greece, in the mysteries of Delphus and Eleusis, this heavenly land was referred to as Mount Olympus and the Elysian Fields. Also in the earliest Vedic times, it was called by various names, such as Ratnasadu, Peak of the Precious Stone, Hermidri, Mountain of Gold, and Mount Meru, home of the gods and Olympus of the Hindus. Symbolically, the peak of this sacred mountain is in the sky, its middle portion on the earth and its base in the subterranean world. The Scandinavian Eddas also mention this celestial city, which was in the subterranean land of Asur of the peoples of Mesopotamia. It was the land of Amendi of the sacred book of the death of the ancient Egyptians. It was the city of 7 petals Od, Vishnu, and the city of the 7 kings of Adam or Eden of Judaic tradition. In other words, it was the terrestrial paradise. In all Asia Minor, not only in the past but also today, there exists a belief in the existence of a city of mystery full of marvels, which is known as Shambhala, where is the temple of the gods. It is also the Urdhimth of the Tibetans and Mongols. The Persians call it Alberti or Ariana, land of their ancestors. The Hebrews called it Canaan and the Mexicans Tolortolan, while the Aztecs called it Mayapan. The Spanish conquerors who came to America believed in the existence of such a city and organized many expeditions to find it, calling it Iwan Dorado, or City of Gold. They probably learned about it from the Aborigines who called it by the name of Manoa or city whose skin wears clothing of gold. By the Celts, this holy land was known as Land of the Mysteries, Duat or Danana. A Chinese tradition speaks of Land of Chitin or the City of a Dozen Serpents. It is the subterranean world, which lies at the roots of heaven. It is the land of Calchas, Khalsis or Coffee, the famous gold ship for which the Argonauts sought when they set out in search of the Golden Fleece. In the Middle Ages, it was referred to as the Isle of Avalon, where the Knights of the Round Table, under the leadership of King Arthur and under the guidance of the magician Merlin, went in search of the Holy Grail, symbol of obedience, justice and immortality. When King Arthur was seriously wounded in a battle, he requested his companion Belvedere to depart on a boat to the confines of the earth, with the following words, that quote, "Farewell, my friend and companion Belvedere, and to the land where it never rains, where there is no sickness and where nobody dies. This is the land of immortality or Agard, the subterranean world. This land is the Walhalla of the Germans, the Monte Salvat of the Knights of the Holy Grail, the Utopia of Thomas More, the city of the son of Campanella, the Shangri-La of Tibet and the Agard of the Buddhist world." Here are the results of the hypothetical solar system hollow planet calculations. Sun's crust equals 18,991 miles thick. Mercury's crust equals 301 miles thick. Venus' crust equals 716 miles thick. Earth's crust equals 800 miles thick. Moon's crust equals 120 miles thick. Mars' crust equals 282 miles thick. Jupiter's crust equals 1,709 miles thick. Saturn's crust equals 705 miles thick. Uranus' crust equals 611 miles thick. Neptune's crust equals 774 miles thick. Pluto's crust equals 41 miles thick. The Legend of Zelda Zen God Defeat Hell. Zelda 7. Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, Iron Man, Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, Captain America, Mark Ruffalo, Bruce Banner, The Hulk, Chris Hemsworth, Thor of a Saggart, Scarlett Johansson, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Jeremy Renner, Clint Barton, Hawkeye. 7 Wise Masters. The Sultan sends his son the young prince to be educated away from the court in the 7 liberal arts by 7 wise masters. On his return to court, his stepmother the Empress seeks to seduce him. To avert danger, he is bound over to a weak silence by Sindbad, leader of the 7 wise masters. During this time, the Empress accuses him to her husband and seeks to bring about his death by 7 stories which she relates to the emperor, but her narrative is each time confuted by the 7 wise masters led by Sindbad. Finally, the prince's lips are unsealed, the truth exposed, and the wicked Empress is executed. The frame narrative served as the flexible way to transmit tales to other listeners. The work was very popular in medieval Europe because of its ease in facilitating the transmission of misogynistic tales. Such stories were growing in popularity when the 7 wise masters first arrived in Europe. Left square bracket citation needed, right square bracket. Saptarishis. The 7 Saptarishi, from Saptarai, a Sanskrit Veda meaning 7 sages, are the 7 rishis who are extolled at many places in the Vedas and Hindu literature. The Vedic Samhitas never actually enumerate these rishis by name, though later Vedic texts such as the Brahmanas and Upanishads do so. They are regarded in the Vedas as the patriarchs of the Vedic religion. The Big Dipper asterism is also called Saptarshi. The earliest list of the 7 rishis is given by Jainamaya Brahmana 2.218-221, Vasistha, Bharadvaja, Jamani, Gautama, Etri, Visvamitra, and Agastya, followed by Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2.2.6 with a slightly different list, Gautama and Bharadvaja, Visvamitra and Jamani, Vasi, Hod and Kasyapa, and Etri. The late Gopatha Brahmana 1.2.8 has Vasi, Hod, Visvamitra, Jamani, Gautama, Bharadvaja, Dainu, Agastya, and Kasyapa. In post-Vedic texts, different lists appear. Some of these rishis were recognized as the mind-born sons, Sanskrit, Manasaputra, of Brahma, the representation of the Supreme Being as creator. Other representations are Mahasha or Shiva as the destroyer and Vishnu as the preserver. Since these 7 rishis were also among the primary 8 rishis, who were considered to be the ancestors of the Gotras of Brahmins, the birth of these rishis was mythicized. In some parts of India, people believe these are 7 stars named Vashishta, Marachi, Pulastaya, Pulaha, Etri, Angiras and Kratu. There is another star slightly visible within it, known as Arundhati. 7 Sages of the Bamboo Grove. The 7 Sages of the Bamboo Grove, simplified Chinese. Traditional Chinese. Pinyin, Xiling Jizayan were a group of Chinese Taoist Pinyin scholars, writers, and musicians who came together in the 3rd century CE. Although the individual members all existed, their interconnection is not entirely certain. Key members of the 7 were linked with the Taoist Cao Wei. They found their lives to be in danger when the avowedly Confucian Jin dynasty came to power. They wrote Taoist poems criticizing the court and the administration, and manuals on Taoist mysticism and Feng Shui. Left square bracket citation needed, right square bracket. It would be a mistake to assume that all members had similar views, however, and while some members tried to negotiate their difficult political positions by self-consciously adopting the roles of ale-fueled pranksters and eccentrics, others eventually capitulated and joined the Jin dynasty, most notably Wanran. Although it is unknown how much they personally engaged in Pinyin, they became the subjects of it themselves in the Shishnozinai, Chinese. A new account of the tales of the world. As is traditionally depicted, the group wished to escape the intrigues, corruption and stifling atmosphere of court life during the politically fraught Three Kingdoms period of Chinese history. They gathered in a bamboo grove near the house of Zai Feng, Akajifeng, in Shanghai, now in Henan province, where they enjoyed and praised in their works the simple, rustic life. This was contrasted with the politics of court. The seven sages stressed the enjoyment of air, personal freedom, spontaneity and a celebration of nature. The genealogy of ancient India's Saptarishis are the hierarchy working under the guidance of the highest creative intelligence, God. The present batch of the Saptarishis, Ritu, Etri, Angirasa, Vasishtu, Ulastaya, Ulalika and Kretu, they bring down to the earth the required knowledge and energies to strengthen the processes of transition, Pralaya. They are naturally the most evolved light beings in the creation and the guardians of the divine laws. The seven rays are said to be seven major types of light substance, spirit/matter, waves/particles that compose the created universes. The seven rays locally originate within the solar logos, that is, the consciousness of the divine being of the sun. They have their ultimate origin within the mind of God. Each of the seven rays is believed to be associated with a different kind of occult energy and a different color. Their symbol is the rainbow. The number 7 is known in the inner circle as the sacred number 7. Let us expand more your knowledge about this number. Deity functions on personal, prepersonal, and superpersonal levels. Total deity is functional on the following 7 levels. 1. Static embed self-contained and self-existent deity. 2. Potential embed self-will and self-purpose of deity. 3. Associated embed self-personalized and divinely fraternal deity. 4. Created embed self-distributed and divinely revealed deity. 5. Evolutional embed self-expansive and creature identified deity. 6. Supreme embed self-experiential and creator unifying deity. Deity functioning on the first creature identificational level, as time-space over-controllers of the grand universe, sometimes designated the supremacy of deity. 7. Ultimate embed self-projected and time-space transcending deity. Deity omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Deity functioning on the second level of unifying divinity expression as effective over-controllers and absonite upholders of the master universe. As compared with the ministry of the deities to the grand universe, this absonite function in the master universe is tantamount to universal over-control and super-sustenance, sometimes called the ultimacy of deity. When we attempt to conceive of perfection in all phases and forms of relativity, we encounter 7 conceivable types. 1. Absolute perfection in all aspects. 2. Absolute perfection in some phases and relative perfection in all other aspects. 3. Absolute, relative, and imperfect aspects in varied association. 4. Absolute perfection in some respects, imperfection in all others. 5. Absolute perfection in no direction, relative perfection in all manifestations. 6. Absolute perfection in no phase, relative in some, imperfect in others. 7. Absolute perfection in no attribute, imperfection in all. The 7 interpretations of the word God. 1. God the Father and Creator, Controller, and Upholder. The Universal Father, the first person of deity. 2. God the Son and Coordinate Creator, Spirit Controller, and Spiritual Administrator. The Eternal Son, the second person of deity. 3. God the Spirit and the Joy Actor, Universal Integrator, and Mind Restorer. The Infinite Spirit, the third person of deity. 4. God the Supreme and the Actualizing or Evolving God of Time and Space. Personal deity associatively realizing the time-space experiential achievement of creature-creator identity. The Supreme Being is personally experiencing the achievement of deity unity as the evolving and experiential God of the evolutionary creatures of time and space. 5. God the sevenfold and deity personality anywhere actually functioning in time and space. The personal paradise deities and their creative associates functioning in and beyond the borders of the central universe and power personalizing as the Supreme Being on the first creature level of unifying deity revelation in time and space. This level, the grand universe, is the sphere of the time-space descension of paradise personalities in reciprocal association with the time-space ascension of evolutionary creatures. 6. God the ultimate the eventuating God of supertime and transcended space. The second experiential level of unifying deity manifestation. God the ultimate implies the attained realization of the synthesized absonite superpersonal, time-space transcended, and eventuated experiential values, coordinated on final creative levels of deity reality. 7. God the absolute the experientializing God of transcended superpersonal values and divinity meanings, now existential as the deity absolute. This is the third level of unifying deity expression and expansion. On this supercreative level, deity experiences exhaustion of personalizable potential, encounters completion of divinity, and undergoes depletion of capacity for self-revelation to successive and progressive levels of other personalization. Deity now encounters, impinges upon, and experiences identity with the unqualified absolute. The 7 Hermetic principles, upon which the entire Hermetic philosophy is based, are as follows. 1. The principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental, and the 5 alien. This principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestations and appearances which we know under the terms of the material universe, the phenomena of light, matter, energy, and, in short, all that is apparent to our material senses is spirit which in itself is unknowable and undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as an universal, infinite, living mind. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe, as a whole, and in its parts or units, has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. 2. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below, as below, so above. This principle embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. The old Hermetic axiom ran in these words, as above, so below, so above. And the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many a dark paradox and hidden secret of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principle of correspondence to them we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. This principle is of universal application and manifestation on the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe, and it is a universal law. 3. The principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest, facts which modern science endorses, and which each new scientific discovery tends to verify. And yet this Hermetic principle was enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. This principle explains that the differences between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration. 4. The principle of polarity. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and like are the same, opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree, extremes meet, all truths are but half-truths, all paradoxes may be reconciled. This principle embodies the truth that everything is dual, everything has two poles, everything has its pair of opposites, all of which were old Hermetic axioms. It explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed so many, which have been stated as follows: thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree, opposites are the same, differing only in degree, the pairs of opposites may be reconciled, extremes meet, everything is and isn't, at the same time, all truths are but half-truths, every truth is half-false, there are two sides to everything, etc., etc., etc. It explains that in everything there are two poles, or opposite aspects, and that opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. 5. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows, out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall, the pendulum swing manifests in everything, the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left, rhythm compensates. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. 6. The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, everything happens according to law, chance is but a name for law not recognized, there are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect from every cause. It explains that everything happens according to a law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermetists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect, to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane they become causers instead of effects. 7. The principle of gender. Gender is in everything, everything has its masculine and feminine principles, gender manifests on all planes. This principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything and the masculine and feminine principles ever at work. This is true not only of the physical plane, but of the mental and even the spiritual planes. On the physical plane, the principle manifests as sex, on the higher planes it takes higher forms, but the principle is ever the same. No creation, physical, mental or spiritual, is possible without this principle. It will now be apparent why so much stress is laid upon the study of symbols, and why students are urged to ponder and meditate upon the cosmic and systemic signs. It prepares them for the grasp and inner retention of the symbols and formulas which embody the knowledge whereby they can eventually work. These formulas are based upon 9 symbols which are now recognized: the cross in its varying forms, the lotus, the triangle, the cube, the sphere and the point; 8 animal forms: the goat, the bull, the elephant, the man, the dragon, the bear, the lion, and the dog; the line; certain signs of the zodiac, hence the need for the study of astrology; the cup, or the Holy Grail. Zelda Skyward Sword theme song opener played in reverse is Zelda's Lullaby. The song I just taught you has some mysterious power. Only royal family members are allowed to learn this song. Remember, it will help to prove your connection with the royal family. Mention as Zelda's Lullaby is a recurring song in the Legend of Zelda series. It is usually associated with Princess Zelda and considered to be her personal theme. The song is slightly altered in most later games in the series, usually playing during scenes focusing on Zelda directly. The notes for the song, as they appear in the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, may be a reference to the shape of the Triforce. If each triangle is viewed as pointing outwards from left to right, they resemble the 3 triangles of the Triforce. Hyperborea equals hero.